representatives of our very important partners present here today, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As introduced by the MC, my name is Daniel Chalo. I work for AATF. And today, before we start the day, I just want to take you through a short journey of what we discussed yesterday, just to refresh our minds. So I will be doing this on behalf of myself and my fellow rapporteur, Lambert, who worked with me yesterday to gain, or rather to gather critical points from the discussions. So just a short journey of what transpired yesterday. It was a very interesting day. We had quite a number of sessions. We had very important presentations made here, starting with a keynote speech and also some critical presentations on different thematic areas. We had over 15 discussants whom we must really appreciate because of the great job they did in trying to bring critical insights into the discussions. And in the morning, we started with the opening session that was graced by honorable ministers. It was graced by representatives from Rex. COMESA was there. It was graced by very important partners from different parts of this continent, and we really appreciate your presence here yesterday. Then we moved over to the session that was setting the stage with regard to what we are here to discuss, trying to take stock of the state of science, technology, and innovations in Africa. And we had a very illuminating keynote speech presented on that session. And then there was a special session where we discussed genome editing. It's one of the technologies that is really gaining momentum in the continent, in the world, and we have really to focus on it because it has the power to transform our sector. And then towards the end of the day, we had a discussion on the Malabo Declaration and linking that to STI. So I'm going to, in the next 10 minutes, present to you a couple of slides, some points that emanated from our discussions yesterday. You all made very important contributions. We have tried to summarize them, so if you don't see a point that you made, don't think that it was not important. It's there, but we are going to just present a snapshot of the discussions that we made. And at the risk of diluting the messages, I decided not to shorten this too much, so you'll bear with me with these statements because they are really trying to capture what we discussed. So we started at the scene setting and also from the opening session with a clear reminder that science, technology, and innovations is a very critical enabler of agricultural transformation. And if we want to really continue focusing on enhancing agricultural production, productivity, fostering resilience in agriculture and food systems, improving the wealth and health of our farmers, then we cannot ignore STI. And also we know that our beloved continent, Africa, is still continuing to face a number of challenges related to biotic and abiotic stresses, declining soil fertility, limited arable land, and therefore the contribution of STI in solving these challenges in the critical sectors of health and agriculture cannot be ignored. And therefore we must continue dialogues around science, technology, and innovations. And we know that the world has entered into the fourth industrial revolution, where innovations such as quantum computing, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, 3D printing, and biotechnology, among others, are playing a critical role in the debates around STI. And therefore, Africa should tap into these developments. We went further to remind ourselves that the topic around STI has not been ignored in the continent. We were reminded that a number of African states, regional economic communities, continental organs, including the FDB, and even the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, has deliberately incorporated the topic of science, technology, and innovations in their strategies, plans, and initiatives. And a number of examples came to the floor. We were reminded of national blueprints such as the Malawi Agenda 2063, the Rwanda Vision 2050, the South African White Paper on Science, Technology, and Innovations. We have the AU Agenda 2063. We have STISA 2024, among others. And also our RECs have also deliberately incorporated science, technology, and innovations in their plans. But what was also noted is that the implementation and domestication of most of these strategies has been very slow, and this was attributed to wavering political will, insufficient science, technology, and innovation infrastructure, insufficient public and private investment in science, technology, and innovations. And therefore, we were also told that investment in research and development globally has become increasingly very critical as a measure of national competitiveness in a very globalized economy that is compressed into very interconnected units by information and communication technologies. And this emphasizes the critical importance of enhancing investment in science, technology, and innovations. We took some stock, and we were reminded that despite the commitments that we have seen, at the moment, the investments in science, technology, and innovations averages at around 0.5% of GDP in the continent. And this is very low compared to the global average of 1.7%. And this low investment has slowed down the rate of innovations and research in the continent. And therefore, the pace of science, technology, and innovation in most countries was noted to be varied, whereas some countries have embraced and made tremendous developments in STI, other countries have lagged. And we were also reminded that most African countries have not posted impressive performance in major STI indicators, including research and development intensity, scholarly publications, investment in research and development, as highlighted earlier, and number of researchers, among other critical indicators. And an observation was made that the world seems to be retreating into regional blocks and spiraling towards deglobalization. And this trend was noted to be tending to create, or rather to reduce the pace of innovation because of declined research collaborations, and it is a factor that we may not afford to ignore. As I continue with these messages, we know that recently we have had a number of shocks and crises, such as COVID-19 and currently the Ukraine crisis. And we were reminded that these crises have not just brought shocks to our food systems, owing to the dependence of our wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine, as well as energy, oil, and also fertilizers. And the shocks have also exposed the vulnerability of our beloved countries to international forces and shocks. But also, this presents an opportunity for renewed focus on science, technology, and innovations to create solutions that can strengthen African food systems and enhance its resilience. And therefore, there was a call for countries with competitive and comparative advantage to take advantage of this and engage in strategies that can enable them to produce and tap into the markets and the opportunities that exist. We went into a phase of discussing genome editing, and there was a presentation that tried really to introduce this seemingly important technology, but in a very easy way. And I recall my colleague, Professor Runo, saying that even if you forget everything, just know that genome editing is a technology that involves removal of a sequence that is not desirable and replacing with a desirable sequence. And it was submitted here that genome editing can really revolutionize agriculture and fast-track the process of developing useful traits that we need to deal with the challenges that were highlighted earlier. And it was submitted also that genome editing is just but one tool that we need to embrace, and Africa should not miss from this, so that we can be able to complement the already existing technologies such as conventional breeding, transgenesis, among others. And we were informed that genome editing can potentially be used for nutrition enhancement, yield improvement, tackling biotic and abiotic stresses, as well as salt tolerance. And we went further to look into the regulations of genome editing, and we were reminded that genome editing products should not be regulated the same way as we did transgenics, because they are comparable to conventional products. And actually, we were told that 2 countries in Africa have set the pace of establishing guidelines to regulate products emanating from genome editing. And they have set a good precedence because the regulations and guidelines in those 2 countries have treated genome-edited products emanating from genome editing as conventional, and therefore they are not supposed to be regulated under the Biosafety Acts. And it was a prayer and a plea that the rest of the 53 countries in Africa would emulate and also follow the same trajectory. And finally, around genome editing, we were reminded that borrowing from the experiences of genetically modified organizations, whose development was spearheaded by private sector, especially multinational companies, in genome editing, we should aim at having this driven by local public institutions and local companies to enhance acceptability, accessibility, and affordability of these technologies. This is my second last slide, and I'm submitting that yesterday we were told that science, technology, and innovations in the continent for sure has yielded several innovations and technologies. What is worrying is that most of these technologies are still lying somewhere and they have not reached the hands of the farmers who desperately need them to enhance their productivity, production, and improve their livelihoods. And therefore, there was a call, as we focus on developing new technologies, that we should also accelerate the deployment and commercialization of the technologies that are already existing. Intellectual property right management was floated as a very critical pillar because it incentivizes breeders, encourages innovations, and the thinking was around, should IPR around genome editing be different from what is already existing? And it was submitted that, indeed, the existing IPR management models, such as the model that we use at AATF, should work very well with products emanating from genome editing. And finally, we appreciated that regulations are very important, but there was a caveat that regulation should not be too stringent to the extent of stifling innovations and science and technology development. And therefore, after all those submissions, there were some discussions around, therefore, what do we need to do? And we were able to package this into two. There was a very strong feeling that we need to work around building very strong political will in support of science, technology, and innovation, particularly facilitating an enabling environment, or rather establishing an enabling environment that facilitates research, science, technology, and innovation, focusing on science-based policy decision-making as opposed to decisions that are based on emotions, rumors, and other non-factual reasons. It was noted that as much as we have many strategies, plans, commitments, we need to focus now on the domestication and implementation of all these initiatives so that we can gain, or rather achieve the aspirations that were set when those strategies were established. It was felt that it is important to strengthen digital infrastructure, build sufficient human capital, because the success of science, technology, and innovations is really pegged on the quality and also the quantity of human capital that is able to drive all the processes around science, technology, and innovation. And finally, and the most critical, enhanced investment in research and development, not just from the public sector, but also increasing the involvement of private sector in investment, including tapping into diaspora. Then the other arm of the call for action was around focusing on the how. It was submitted that we know the what, but what needs to be done now is to focus on the how. And this was submitted that we need to focus on developing a science culture, enhancing cross-border transfer of technologies, and particularly learning from previous experiences, focusing on co-creation of technologies, not importing technology from other regions without necessarily involving the local partners. And linked to that also, demand-driven innovations. And I liked one submission towards the end where we were asking ourselves, when do we invite the private sector? And it was submitted that we don't need to invite the private sector. All we need to do is to ensure that our innovations are serving, or rather solving a problem in the private sector, and the private sector will see business in it, and therefore they will be willing to participate in the innovation without even being invited. And therefore, having demand-driven innovation is very critical. And also prioritize the transfer of existing technologies, because as much as we're talking about research, innovations, the innovations will only create the impact that we intend if they reach the hands of the users. And therefore, we must deliberately engage into discussions that would really push technologies and innovations to the farmers. And that is around the model that AATF operates in. Partnerships are very critical, and it was submitted here that deliberate inclusion of multi-sectoral collaborations and partnerships is very important, bringing to the table all critical stakeholders, including policymakers, the private sector, the scientists, the farmers, the civil society, NGOs, anybody that is critical in this whole chain needs to be on board so that we can be able to really deliberate on how to implement all the things that we've talked about here. And finally, awareness creation and sensitization, and particularly around demystifying some of the misconceptions that have shrouded a lot of technologies in the continent. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the points that we captured, and I want to appreciate you for your attention. Thank you very much. Urakoze.
Let's give our rapporteur another hand of applause, please. He deserves it. Thank you. All right, quickly, a few housekeeping measures. First, COVID testing. You'll be leaving, for those who want to go for their tests, who need to go for their tests, you'll be leaving the premises. So we're talking about Convention Center, we're talking about the Radisson Blu. You'll be leaving here at 12, at noon. Transportation will be arranged for you. Remember, you have to be at the entrance for departure. Also, we have breakout sessions in the afternoon, so not everything will be taking place here. We'll actually have 3 sessions that will be taking place simultaneously, 1 here, 2 more in different rooms. For you to take place in those, you need to register. As you remember yesterday, there's a desk right outside of this room. Registration will take place there. Now, quickly, to move on to the next session, let me call Dr. Philbert Nirondi from COSTECH. I hope I'm saying it right. Dr. Philbert Nirondi. And this session is regulating gene-edited technologies, experiences from Africa and lessons from Argentina and Latin America and the Caribbean. You have an hour and 20 minutes. An hour and 20 minutes. It's 10 a.m., so we have until 11:20. Thank you very much, sir.
Madam Se, habari ya asubuhi, good morning, bonjour. So, ladies and gentlemen, protocol observed. I have very limited time, 120 minutes. No, 80 minutes are very little for the session. So, I would call upon the speaker, Dr. Martin Rema, and discussant as well, Dr. Margaret Karembo, Dr. Jeremy, Dr. John, Dr. Faustin, no, Mr. Faustin, and Dr. Gregor. So the discussion about gene editing started yesterday, and racking up in the briefing, the recap, the Rapporteur captured it very well. So I'm quickly inviting Dr. Martin Rema, the policy and regulatory expert, to provoke the discussion.
Hello, everyone. Just controlling my time here. Okay. Hello, my name is Martin Lema. I'm from Argentina. I'm a professor at the National University of Quilmes in my country, and I was the chair of the Argentine Biosafety Commission during the years that we developed a policy and we implemented that policy for regulating genome-edited organisms. So now I'm going to give you a presentation with 3 stages. First of all, I will explain how is our criteria for regulating this kind of technologies. then the impact that this step in deciding how to regulate this new technology had on innovation economy, and finally, a brief description of our approach to try reaching international harmonization in this regard. So, first of all, the regulatory criteria. It was developed by the Argentine National Biosafety Commission called CONABIA. It's worthwhile to mention that this commission has been recognized by FAO as a center of reference for biosafety of genetically modified organisms and modern biotechnology. In developing a policy for this new technology, at least new for regulators, but not new for science because it has been around for more than 2 decades now, for these genome editing products, first of all, we began with the basics by recognizing that at that moment, several years ago, we had 2 well-established regulatory options. On one side, I don't know if you can see the laser, but on your left, the historical or usual regulation for new varieties or breeds. This, what I'm describing is for Argentina, but it's surely the same in most countries, including yours. When we have a new variety obtained by crossing or by different kinds of mutation, including mutagenesis using chemicals or radiation, we register them using this system that really doesn't, is not based on much knowledge about what was the genetic change, but it can have a risk assessment stage if the trait enables a risk hypothesis. So if we have a conventional new variety and the trait makes the regulator think that there could be a risk, then a risk assessment is performed. And then when transgenic organisms appear, a couple of decades ago, we developed this other regulatory system on top of the other one for transgenic organisms, where a lot of more information is requested. There are many other risk hypotheses, and most of that is triggered because with transgenic organisms, we have the capability of bringing pieces of DNA from unrelated species into a different one. Here we have an example of each case. On that side, a mutant copy obtained by radiation that is being presented to Zambia farmers with the auspices of FAO and the International Agency of Atomic Energy, drought tolerant. On this side, a transgenic wheat that is also drought tolerant, developed by an Argentine company, Bioseries. Same trait, possibly similar risk safety considerations, 2 very different regulatory approaches. But what makes a transgenic organism to be classified as, or to be regulated in this additional or special way? Well, in Argentina and many other countries, we use the Cartagena protocol definition, which you see in the screen, and whatever fits into this definition is considered an LMO, living modified organism, or GMO, genetically modified organism, and every transgenic organism will enter into this definition. It's quite convoluted and baroque, but if we look at the essentials, a living modified organism is obtained by the use of recombinant DNA technologies, and it has a novel combination of genetic materials. Historically, for regulating transgenic organisms, this trigger was the one that was used to decide that they had to be treated differently. And that's the more important part of the definition historically. But now for genome editing products and other products that we, in the overall call new breeding techniques, also the second condition, then having a novel combination of genetic material is key to classify which regulatory system to apply. So taking into account the definition, we develop a very simple decision tree. Maybe you have seen this before. It's very similar to the one that has been developed in Kenya. Basically, there are 2 main questions. Has recombinant DNA been used in some way? And then, has that led to a new combination of genetic material in the recipient organism? The Biosafety Commission has to answer those 2 questions, and the result is used to define if the product is classified as GMO, genetically modified organism, /LMO or no. If the answer is no, then it's a conventional new variety. And very importantly, we also we have two possibilities: to ask for a determination of the regulatory standing for final products with all the regulatory information, or at the product formulation or product development stage. So we also can answer preliminary questions in preliminary mode. And this is important. I will tell you why later. So regulators usually classify genome-edited products into 4 categories. You could have gene-edited products obtained by oligonucleotide-directed mutagenesis that uses a small stretch of a nucleic acid to introduce a point mutation. Or you can use site-directed nucleases, including CRISPR, of course, but also TALEN, meganuclease, and zinc fingers. With site-directed nucleases, you can have 3 outcomes depending on how the technique is applied. So you could have SDN1, where again a point or a small mutation is created. The site of the location is site-directed, but the result is random. Or you could have SDN2, where the result of the mutation is also controlled by adding a small piece of DNA. Or you can have SDN3, where the site-directed use of the nuclease is used to introduce a completely new piece of DNA from the outside. So when discussing these different kind of products, usually, according to our criteria, the first 3 will be considered non-GMOs. Just another way of doing mutagenesis, but instead of using chemicals or radiation or spontaneous mutation, we are now using a molecular biology tool, the site-directed nuclease, but it's just a mutant, not a GMO. Only in the case of SDN3, it is considered to have a transgenic organism or a genetically modified organism, because there is a new combination of genetic material marked in yellow in this graphic. So with this, we at the Biosafety Commission, we analyzed many cases. Some of them were actual applications. Some of them we just took examples from the scientific literature and made an exercise. And this is a map. On the vertical dimension, you can see one of the elements of the Cartagena protocol definition, the use of recombinant DNA at different degrees. And in the horizontal dimension, you can see the other component of the Cartagena protocol definition, if there is a novel combination of genetic material or not in a scale. So with this, we can classify the results of the different techniques that are available, including the GMOs that are actually in the market, genome editing, and also other techniques that we call new breeding, a wider group that we call new breeding techniques. For you in the back that may not look at it well, this is a zoom on the upper map, on the upper side of this map. So these are the techniques that will lead to products that will be classified as GMOs. And this is the lower part of the map, including several new breeding techniques, but in particular genome editing using site-directed nucleases of type 1, type 2, and there is a very particular case of SDN3 called perfect allelic replacement. And for that very particular case of SDN3, neither is considered GMO, is considered a conventional new variety, because SDN3 imperfect allelic replacement reproduces what could have achieved by a sexual crossing within the same species. So there is no transgenesis or new combination of genetic material. Okay, let me now explain a little bit how the process is. Coming back to the 2 historical options or ways of regulating new genetic variants, this is how we historically regulate conventional new varieties. So there is crossing and mutagenesis-based breeding. The story begins with the yellow star. Then the developer must do field trials to show that this variety grows well in Argentina and its characteristics are unique. Then all the information is taken to the conventional regulator, we call it the seed register in the case of plants, and the seed register may do a risk assessment if the trait is so new or has some particularity that makes think that perhaps there is a risk over there. So even for me as a GMO regulator, it was interesting to learn that the regulator of conventional products also does risk assessment when the trait may present a risk hypothesis. So it's not like for conventional varieties, there is no risk assessment. And then if everything is well, we have a registration of the variety. Then when transgenic organisms or LMO appear, we superimpose this other part. So now the story begins on the yellow star. We have a genetically modified organism. Then we have field trials, both for regulatory risk assessment process and for the future variety registration. Then we have the risk assessment based mostly on the genetic modification by the GMO regulator. Then we have the approval of the transformation event, the clearance of the event, but that's not a variety. So that transformation event will be in one or more varieties, and each one of those varieties will be registered as before. So that's what we had previously. As regards to genome editing, products, they could be GMO or not. So now the story begins in the yellow star. If non-GMO, as before. If GMO, as before, but for GMOs. And a little comment, if a genome edited product is not a GMO, but the GMO regulator, when doing the assessment that this is not a GMO, nevertheless develops a risk hypothesis because of the trait, the GMO regulator is not entitled to do the safety assessment because it's not a GMO. But if they detect a risk hypothesis, they have the obligation under the Argentine system to notify the risk hypothesis to the conventional regulator. So they both cooperate to make sure that no risk hypothesis is unattended. We call that minding the gap. So far that's how our regulatory system works for genome-edited products. It has been working fine. I'm going to show you the caseload in a moment. In addition to work well on the legal or regulatory sphere, we have seen that this approach has been very positive as regards to innovation economy. In here you can see in blue the timeline of GMO approvals since 1996 when Argentina approved the herbicide-tolerant soybean, the first transgenic event. And then all the blue are GM crops or GM vaccines for veterinary use, approved in Argentina over the years. And then in 2016, we started to decide on a case-by-case basis if products from genome editing were GMO or not. And all the products that are obtained by genome editing and some other new breeding techniques that are non-GMO, you can see that in orange. And the slope of their appearance is steeper compared to GMO. So we are seeing here that this technology is evolving faster compared to genetically modified or transgenic organisms. Also, importantly, you see the yellow stars. Those are cases of products that were presented to the Regulatory Commission to be potential non-GMOs, but then the Commission say, in this case, there is a new combination of genetic material and it is a GMO. So it's not something that the developer can decide by itself. You need the Biosafety Commission to look at every case. This is our caseload of products from genome editing and other new breeding techniques that were presented and cleared to be non-GMOs. In the pie chart, you can see them distributed. Most of them are genome editing or products from genome editing, but there is a little proportion of, for instance, products improved by epigenetic modification or epigenetic changes. So there are some other new breeding techniques that are also appearing and may be useful. It's important then that, if possible, any new regulatory system is not just about genome editing, but also eventually includes these other new breeding techniques. On your left, the case is classified according to the biological kingdom, animal, plants, and microorganisms, and according to the traits. You can see that there are many interesting traits over there, like resilience to climate change, consumer benefits, or even animal welfare. Then on the right, you have this same graph, but for GMOs, transgenic organisms that have been approved in Argentina over 25 years. So GMOs in 25 years versus genome editing in 5 years. And you can see that the diversity is much bigger for genome editing. I mean, with GMOs, we have this effect called blockbuster, where only a few crops and a few traits can go all the way from development to commercialization. So there are few options for farmers, and usually for farmers with bigger pockets in this case. But with genome editing, that's not the case. We have more traits for a wider audience, and developed by other actors. Here you have 3 pie charts. On the side of new breeding techniques, mostly genome editing, you can see that most of the applicants are from Argentine origin, public sector, institutions, or national biotech companies. Some of them are startups, most of that. And then the other half, most of the other half are foreign small and medium enterprises, and only a small proportion of the big multinational biotech companies. So big multinational biotech companies are not excluded, they are playing, but in numbers, they are outnumbered by the local research and small companies in different countries. So that makes the whole thing more dynamic. We have more players exploring more niches, more traits in different crops for the benefit of different production chains and different kinds of farmers. Of these, you can see in the small pie chart that most of the presentations are still ongoing projects. So they came with an idea, they say, this is my idea, this is what I pretend to obtain, and the Biosafety Commission said, if you obtain exactly that, that will not be a GMO. But then come later with the data. You may say that's not a final answer, but that is very important for national developers, because usually they use that answer to decide if they go on with a project or to get funding from the public, from the government, from the Ministry of Science, or from private sector investors. So giving that possibility of a preliminary answer is very important for local developments. And if you compare that with 25 years of genetically modified organisms, so having a lot of years and opportunity for different companies to come, actually only 5 big multinational companies are responsible for 90% of the approval, and a small proportion of 2 national companies have achieved to approve a genetically modified organism in Argentina. So it's completely, the profile of the developers is completely reversed, but no developer is excluded. So having this regulation in place that allows national developers, including the private sector, to make a preliminary consultation, and with that certainty to move on with the project, and of course, then if it is not a GMO, they do not have to do the whole set of studies for GMO, only perhaps 1 or 2 studies that the conventional regulator will ask them, reducing the cost of the regulatory phase. That is enabling a lot of public and private investment in research and development in Argentina. Yesterday, it was said that genome editing is much cheaper compared to transgenesis. In my personal perspective, that's the case, but just because when it is regulated as a non-GMO. Because as it was said yesterday, the laboratory capacities, the training needed for obtaining a transgenic organism and for obtaining a genome-edited organism are about the same. The molecular biology costs are about the same. The big difference can be made at the regulatory stance, depending on how you regulate it. So in Argentina and in other countries in our region, we're seeing cases like this. National Institute of Agricultural Technology developing a genome-edited potato, and they also developing genome-edited alfalfa and other crops. Came to the commission, presented the project. We said this is not a GMO. That facilitated a lot doing field trials for testing if the variety grows well and the trait functions well, and also getting investment in that project to continue to commercial phase. This is a startup, an Argentine startup for developing genome-edited crops that only exists because of our regulation. If we didn't have this regulation, this startup will never be created. And this startup began in Santa Fe, an Argentine province, but now it has another desk in the United States, so it's growing. This is a historically established Argentine seed company, like a small seed multinational actually, of Argentine origin. It's selling seeds in the southern corn, Brazil, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, also the United States, and also South Africa, Don Mario. But historically, this company will license all the biotech traits to the big companies that have them approved. Now after this kind of regulation for genome editing was adopted in Argentina and in our neighbor Brazil and in our neighbor Paraguay, and similar things are happening in the US, this Argentine company decided to invest in creating their own biotechnology lab. So they brought the equipment, hired the people, and now they have their own biotechnology lab to develop their own biotechnology traits based on genome editing. And this is not only happening in plants. Now we are back in the Argentine National Institute of Agricultural Technology. They are performing genome editing in animals, in this case for improving milk quality, and also the private sector. We have, this is a story about an Argentine company that pre-existed and was devoted to assisted reproduction, artificial insemination, animal cloning. But now, after we had this regulation for genome editing, they are also starting to have projects on genome edited animals. And recently, they associated with a similar small, medium company from the United States, and both of them are working as peers, not as a big and a small company, but companies of the same size, collaborating for stocking their traits and having better products for the US, for Argentina, and for Brazil. And these are only 5. There are more examples, of course. Well, Argentina not only worked on having its own regulation in place appropriately, telling the public about it, changing the regulation or updating the regulation depending on the public's feedback, and of course the feedback from the interested parties. Also, we have been working in trying to reach global harmonization, because this is not going to work if only Argentina was doing this. So from the start, from the very year we enacted this new regulation in 2015. The very same year we published a paper in English in a peer-reviewed journal, so other countries can read what we were doing in a more universal or more widespread language. And we kept on publishing about different aspects, including social impacts of having this kind of regulation in place, updating every couple of years as we kept on learning and fine-tuning the regulation. And even today, we kept on publishing on implementation aspects, like off-target effects, because when assessing these products, assessing if they are GMO or not, the dossier is not like a GMO dossier, it's simpler, but nevertheless, it has technical content that needs expert considerations. And let's say the only new topic or the new thing to be carefully looked by the regulators regarding risks or regarding implementation of the definition is the thing about off-target effects and potential unintended DNA insertions. So that demanded us to develop new criteria, and of course we ended up sharing that criteria. So now when as it was said yesterday, for instance, in Africa, there are countries that have implemented comparable regulations, and now they are beginning to analyze dossiers. This is the next thing that the regulators need to catch up with. And not only we publish alone, or Argentine regulators alone, we also team up with regulators from our region and other regions to get a more harmonized approach and style and criteria, and therefore we have more information disseminated. Not only in paper or in writing, also in international fora, in bilateral meetings. We even, as a country, championed a declaration in the World Trade Organization trying to anticipate potential issues in the future regarding lack of harmonization and trade barriers. We do not want to have again the problem we have with Gmos or with other biotechnologies applied to agriculture. So we presented this statement in the World Trade Organization, highlighting that genome editing is a very promising technique for agriculture. We will need it in the future, and we need to have a harmonized science-based criteria for its regulation. Fortunately, in the end, it was not Argentina alone. Many other countries joined at the moment of presenting it, and then in the floor, when we were telling it to the rest of the WTO, other countries also raised their flag and say, I support that, including ECOWAS. If you're interested, that's the code. You can find the statement online by that code. We also championed a declaration by the ministers of agriculture of our region in the same sense, signed by the ministers themselves. Some years ago, 3 years ago, Argentina was the host of the G20 meeting. As host of the G20 meeting, in the chapter about scientific and agricultural cooperation, we contributed or presented a declaration draft mentioning genome editing as a very important topic for agricultural development in the future. And fortunately, the chief research scientists of the other G20 countries were in favor of saying that, and that included even countries whose regulation is not exactly the same as in Argentina. And finally, we have also been carefully looking at what's happening in CBD and Cartagena Protocol. For instance, last meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2018, these are excerpts from different, it's not a single file, these are experts from different files that were presented, different decision drafts that were presented to the CBD. And many of them speaking of genome editing with different approaches. Those approaches were not consensuated, that's why you see the brackets. And at least for Argentina, many of them were controversial because they were just assuming that genome editing was the same as LMO, and we didn't agree with that. So during the negotiations, I was the delegate for the Argentine government. We teamed up with other countries, including many African countries, to oppose this language. And in the end, we reduced all of that to only this. So in the adopted decisions of the CBD in the last meeting, there were only 2 references to genome editing, and with a language that allows or is compatible with considering that some of these products are not LMOs. And I think it's important that when the new meeting of the CBD takes place in China, possibly second half of this year, we are at different countries, we are attentive to the language referring to genome editing, and on every instance, we demand that the language reflects the idea that not necessarily all genome-edited organisms are GMOs. Some of them may be, some of them may not be. All this international outreach has been successful, I think. We have been speaking with countries in our region and in other regions, including Africa. I had the privilege, not only the privilege of being here today, but also being in other workshops or visiting other countries before to share our advances. Here I'm only speaking about what's happening in the rest of Latin America. In 2015, we enacted the regulation, and only 5 years later, another 7 countries in our region had a similar approach, inspired more or less on our initial step. And those are big countries in terms of territory, so it covers most of Latin America. And in those countries, the approach is, there are different languages, so there might be minor differences, but the overall approach is the same, using the national definition of GMOs to decide if a product for genome editing is or not a GMO, acknowledging that some of them may not be. Most of them use the Cartagena Protocol definition or a variant of that. And in countries that were early adopters of this regulation after Argentina, including Chile, Brazil, Colombia, a couple of years after their version of the regulation was enacted, they started to see the same thing. Public sector research and private local biotech enterprises presenting to the regulators new projects on genome editing, and they having the opportunity to say, this is not a GMO, you can proceed, and those projects rising up. For instance, yesterday was mentioned the case of gene-edited rice in Colombia, but there are many other cases in Chile and a lot of cases in Brazil. Several from local research, but also interesting traits from other countries coming to Latin America, but not all of them from the same big 5 biotech companies that we all know. Also small companies that are now beginning to engage usually around a single product, and of course they have a different kind of relationship with the local market. And with this I finish. Here is a link to my LinkedIn webpage. In there I have posted all the publications that I have mentioned before. There are so many, so I'm not assuming that they were going to be interested in reading 15 papers. If you are interested enough for further reading, I recommend these 3 ones that mostly summarize what I have been describing. And with this I finish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rema, for sharing Argentina experience. May I call upon Dr. Slas Obukwesi from NEPAD? And
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just want to give him 2 minutes to give an overview before coming back for discussion.
Thank you.
Just Africa perspective.
Thank you. My name is Teleso Bukosia, and I work as a principal program officer in African Union Development Agency, Nairobi office. Yes, that is my background. Is before I worked with Africa Harvest, Dr. Florence there, the international organization. I worked on ABS sorghum. Then I worked with USAID as a regulator, as an advisor in biotechnology. Before I was a lecturer in a university. Thanks so much. Now I'll give you the perspective of African Union regarding the genome editing. The genesis starts in 2018 during the COP meeting. And as Lema said, and I appreciate your support, we'll just build on what you've said here. One, during that meeting, the international team felt that genome editing, gene drives, and synthetic biology should be put together and then banned here. But then African member countries had interest in gene drives here. And so they took interest, and because the mosquitoes are most of the havoc to African member countries here. So the story is that they did not succeed to ban it here, but they took interest now in genome editing and asked African Union AUD to train them in genome editing. In 2019, the training was conducted with support of ABNA program with external support, and 61 member countries attended here. 31 were from member states here. What came out of that is that it focused on only 5 applications. One, as that have been covered, the ODM, then also those enzyme-based applications, 4 enzyme-based applications, SDN1, SDN2, and SDN3. What was the outcome? The African Union member countries feel that this is a technology they want to use to improve their crops. 2, they want to use a science-based decision to decide how to regulate it here. And number 3, it has to be done on a case-by-case basis here. 4th point, let me just add, they also prefer to use the, am I overshooting? Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. I stop there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I called Dr. Seras because when Dr. Martin was presenting, I was hearing the voice of Professor Francis from ATF. The technology is not safe even when it doesn't exist in Africa. So, and then I was also hearing the voice of my minister. Why delete a gene? What if it is required tomorrow? This should be strictly regulated. So maybe Aisa has a good experience. Dr. Margaret will comment on that when is explaining the trends that is surfacing in Africa. Please, Dr. Margaret. Karibu. You can use it.
Good morning. Good morning, Jambo. Am I audible? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me first start by appreciating the organizers of this excellent conference that has given us an opportunity to do a lot of networking, starting with Dr. Canisius Kanangire, who is also my boss on the other side. He serves in the ISA AfriCenter board. I also want to recognize where my journey of science started, again from very far, 4 decades ago, just to say how old I am, with Dr. Marie-Christine Lazingirwa. She's here. Christine, please raise your hand, because she trained me as a science teacher 40 years ago. So my passion for science started then. So it looks like when I write my memoirs, it will be the beginning, Rwanda. It could be ending Rwanda with Canisius. Then in the middle, I had one of the great genetic engineers who mentored me, Dr. Florence Wambugo. She's right here. Florence, thank you very much. And of course, all of you, if I had the day, I would mention each one of you by name, most of you, because we have all worked very well together. So in the next 5 minutes, I just wanted to share very quickly what kind of trends we have seen as ISA, having been established to track the global developments in agribiotechnology. We've done that over the last 25 years. That is mainly focusing on genetic modification or biotech crops, but now widening the scope into genome editing and other emerging technologies. So when it comes to genome editing, one of the trends we have seen is that it has a very broad application from agriculture, environment, animal science, human health, and also in industrial applications. So here is an opportunity for a tool that is cutting across the various disciplines. Unlike with genetic modification, where we saw the health sector, even though some of the products like insulin were earlier released, but there was a lot of hesitation from the health sector, but now we are seeing leading role in the health, and that is why we were also able to get very quickly some of the medicines and vaccines that we have been using. So that is a very key indicator that there is an opportunity for cross-discipline collaboration. And that is important when it comes to the regulatory perspectives, because then it means disciplines from health, from environment, from industrial, and also from the animal health can get together to negotiate with the regulators and be able to come up with regulations that work to support innovations in genome editing. The second trend that we have seen is the role of the public sector. We have seen even when Argentina, Martin was presenting the Argentina case, there has been more involvement of the public sector research institutions. We are seeing small companies, local and foreign, getting very involved and actually creating businesses. Again, this is important for us in Africa because of the strategies we have developed to develop a bio-based economy. So if you're thinking about bioeconomy, genome editing seems to be an excellent tool that can be applied to accelerate the rate at which we can raise our bioeconomy base and develop our continent so that people can have healthy living, quality of life, where everybody can have access to innovations that apply at their level. I think in addition to that, we have also seen a lot of interest in public institutions and public researchers to apply genome editing in different crops, not only those crops that were earlier on considered, especially in the GM era, as global tradable commodities, but where this technology is now being applied to African staple crops. We had yesterday about banana, sorghum, rice, and many others, yam. So there is a good opportunity here to utilize genome editing to improve on our African staple crops that are directly needed for food, for feed, and for propelling our industries. On the third component that I shouldn't stop before I mention is about the leaders. When you look at the landscape in terms of the number of patents, the number of innovations, we are seeing a situation where the Asias, the Latin Americas have taken lead. They are almost matching with the bigger giants, the US, for example. And in fact, there's a paper that was done in a review that was done in 2020 that found that in terms of patents relating to genome editing tools like CRISPR, China is almost matching the US. So that tells us that there is also now bigger opportunities for South-South collaboration, and we need to utilize these opportunities so that Africa can move forward. Finally, of course I can see the moderator is looking at me, I'll leave the regulatory because that is also a very important component, but since other members are going to talk about that, communication. I think what we've been tracking in ISA is really the way and the lessons that we could draw from the era of GM and the new era of genome editing, or the continuing era of genome editing. It is important that we are cautious not to overclaim the benefits of genome editing, because that creates suspicion among our general population that the technology is moving too fast. And when it comes to the use of terminologies, the jargon that we use, I think it's high time that we start developing phrases that relate to the end users, that relate to our policymakers, that terms that don't scare our policymakers, so that when it comes to developing regulations, then they'll be able to develop regulations based on an understanding of exactly what the tools are about. And I liked our teacher here, Professor Runo. He broke it down very, very well. And maybe this is the language, this is the message that we need to pass out there. Finally, the narrative, the framing of the narrative for genome editing, we need to make sure that we frame it in a way that it is building the trust of our audiences, of our end users, in a way that they will feel confident to utilize the tools, and our industries, both local and the bigger manufacturing, will be able to use this technology. So last year we launched the African Coalition for Communicating about Genome Editing, because again we believe the game changer in all these innovations is in the way we present them to our end users. So communication is going to be key, and I would appeal to all of you, look out for the coalition, let's join up together and let's see how best we package the messages to frame the narrative in a way that builds trust and confidence with these tools. Thank you.
Thank you. Well summarized, Dr. Margaret. Dr. John, what do you think COMESA can leverage on when it comes to gene editing?
Thank you very much, Chair. As COMESA, we have many institutions that deal with banking, with the youth, with the gender, with insurance. So my institution, ACTESA, which is the Alliance for Commodity Trade in Eastern and Southern Africa, our interest is to make sure that the almost 90 million smallholder farmers, they increase their productivity and, of course, access the market. So we at ACTESA, we are looking at the genome editing as a technology or an input which is conventional. You know, it's not like the GMO. So looking at the presentation that was done by IIT yesterday, Kenya, I think Eswatini, they have in place guidelines for genome editing, and we have Ethiopia and Malawi that are in the process. So what we want to do at the COMESA is to make sure that we have harmonized guidelines for the genome editing so that we can quickly support the farmers to increase their productivity. And also we want to, of course, to thank ATF and OFAP to inviting us here, because we want to take this at a higher level. So when we have the Ministers of Agriculture, Natural Resources and Environment, I think we need to present the key findings that will come out from this meeting so that our ministers are aware about it. And we're also thinking of having a high-level meeting for the ministers in the 21 COMESA member states, that we want this technology to be utilized and to be part of the technology to support the smallholder farmers, so that they are commercialized and can be able, to produce enough, food for the continent. This is because the creation of ACTESA was emanated from the CADAP, priority areas number 2, which is on market access, and 3 on food, household and nutrition, food security. So as COMESA, we are happy that we're here, and we want to make sure that this is practically implemented by making sure that our partners like ATF, ISA, the AU, NEPAD, we work together with them so that we make this as practical as possible, because when you look at I think Malabo Declaration of having no hunger by 2030, that is only 7 years from now, or 8 years from now. So for us, as an institution of COMESA, we had done work on the biotechnology and biosafety, but that work, lagged behind. So we want to reintroduce a program so that we can make sure that whatever is available here can be accessed to the private sector, to the small, medium, farmers, so that this can become a reality. So we're also thinking that with our partners that are here, like what Isa has said here, is that we need to develop what you call the data-driven communication strategy, so that the member states, the 21 COMESA member states, they can appreciate this technology and make sure that, like we did on the seed harmonization, where we had almost half of the countries, they didn't have the regulations on how to do the certification of seed, phytosanitary, quarantine, measurement for import and export. So we don't have to revert the wheel. So the countries that have made progress, we embrace other countries so that when you have a harmonized system, I can give an example of Eritrea, who is a member of COMESA, and Djibouti. They did not have regulations on certification, variety release, And so they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Through the harmonized system, Eritrea, they have the seed laws and the regulations. Djibouti, the same. Comoros, they have, they are to participate in the commercial harmonized seed system. So we want to do the same on the gene editing so that, this, as I've mentioned, is conventional technique. It's not controversial. So we want quickly, to take it up, making sure that it's agreed at a regional level, because if we leave, only Kenya and Eswatini to go with this, it will take another 20 years or 30 years, and 2063 is not very far from now. So we are thinking that starting this year, we'll take it up, have at least 2 high-level meetings on the same, and making sure that the key partners that are here participate, and the messages that are going to come tomorrow, key messages, we need that message so that it can be taken to our ministers, and we'll make practical recommendations through my organization, Actesa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's an opportunity for us. As you were responding, I was thinking of Rwanda has been championing a number of technology. And I also saw the presentation, gene editing of the cattle in Argentina, the successful effect. I was thinking of Inyambo. Can we improve it? But when you were answering that, what is the status of biosafety regulation biosafety law, the regulation in Rwanda, and what are opportunities that we can leverage on to integrate gene editing? Mr. Faustin, welcome.
Thank you very much, moderator, for the question. As you highlighted, Rwanda have been vanguard in various areas, but for this one, as the presentation of Francis portrayed it, where the activities are still ongoing, we are not yet there. But in terms of regulating the living modified organisms, as you all know, Rwanda is a signatory to the Convention on Biodiversity, and it is also the signatory to the Cartagena Protocol, which is on biosafety since 1997. And the fact that Rwanda is a member and a party to the convention, it requires us to put in place both administrative and regulatory measures on biosafety. In 2017, in June, when we adopted the revised climate change, environment and climate change policy, biosafety was integrated as one of the policy objective to solve some of the key issues we are having in the environment. The fact that it was integrated in the policy, it made us developing a biosafety national implementation strategy. And this strategy was adopted in 2020. And this strategy was the cornerstone of the management of biosafety in the country, because the strategy is stipulating who is doing what and when in terms of regulating living modified organisms. Indeed, the strategy was clear on the institutional framework, where it established the National Competent Authority, which is the Rwanda Environment Management Authority, which is in charge of coordinating all the activities related to regulation of living modified organisms. But to be in the position to do so within the National Competent Authority, we established what we call a registrar office, which will be entitled to manage all the applications. We also have established the clean house mechanism, biosafety clean house mechanism, which is a platform, which is an online platform which will help to communicate or to apply, to communicate all the information related to biosafety. Indeed, the policy was very clear on the regulatory framework. We established the law on biosafety management, which we started the process in 2019. But since this technology and the science was new for various key stakeholders, with the support of AUDA and NEPAD, we first focused on awareness raising and the communication. We did the awareness, first we focused on experts from various universities and research institutions here in Rwanda. Then after that, we did the awareness and the capacity building of various journalists and media houses, at least to understand what are the risks, what are the matters which are going to be solved by the law we are going to put in place. Then later on, we also build the capacity and raise awareness from various sister institutions and ministries which are either affected or interested with the biosafety. So after that holistic awareness, we established the law together, and after validating the draft, it is now submitted to, our Ministry of Environment has submitted to the Prime Minister's office so that it can be adopted by the Cabinet soon. So all the technical discussions on the law have been completed. We are waiting the law to be tabled for the Cabinet. Once it is approved by the Cabinet, then it will go to the Parliament. So we are also working with the Parliament, especially the committee in charge of environment and agriculture, which is entitled to review the bill once it reaches the Parliament. We are also working with them in terms of raising awareness to at least to understand the technical terms, to understand the rationale of the law, so that once it is there, it will be fast-tracked. But through that journey, we have some challenges. The first challenge is, as I said, is the lack of the expertise in the country. Looking at the technology itself, be it for living modified organisms, or being for genome editing, it's new, and we have few experts which need to be capacitated in terms of understanding and helping others to understand. So it's still a journey, and we are in together. The second challenge is that since the law is not yet approved, we are trying informally to use the committees. In the law, it stipulates that we need to have a national biosafety committee, which is composed by various institutions in the country, including the representatives of civil society and private sector. But in the course of adopting the law, we built the capacity, but we need them to have that mandate. So since they don't have that mandate, we are now working with them just to keep them awake so that once the law is adopted, it will be tic-tac. So those are the key main challenges we are having, but our clearing, our biosafety clearing house is working, and we are working together with the information providers so that we can make it useful even before the law is adopted. So that's what I can say as the status of regulating the biosafety in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. A quick one. Do you see opportunities of integrating gene editing in the current status, the one that is the law that is already on the Prime Minister's office?
Thank you very much. For the genome editing, it was not included in the first draft, but as the law is not static and it is still in the discussion, it is subject to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Moderator, quickly, just a reminder, we have 13 minutes left to the end of the panel. Thank you.
Dr. Gregor, can you share the global legal aspect of the gene editing?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate being invited here to participate in this panel. And I guess I am brought in to talk about the sort of broader global context. I know that Martin did a great job of talking about what the story is in Latin America, but there are a lot of other countries that are also addressing these same issues. Before I get to the specific countries, I just wanted to repeat a point that I think Martin made and also Lena made yesterday, that, you know, the issue is not whether these products should be regulated. The issue is whether they should have any special regulation because of their gene editing, because they were made with gene editing. And I think that's really important, because if a food product is gene edited, it's still going to be regulated as a food, because all foods are regulated in a country. If it's a pesticidal product that's made with gene editing, it's still going to be regulated as a pesticide. And so sometimes we forget that, and sometimes the discussion is about whether they should be regulated or not regulated. And keep in mind, if you say it's not regulated, what are consumers and the public going to think about that? That it's an unregulated product going into the market, as opposed to a product that's regulated, but just not specially regulated because it's genetically engineered, gene edited. So with that, what's happening around other parts of the world is really a spectrum. And so on one end of that spectrum, you have countries that are treating gene-edited products identical to GMOs. And that includes the European Union and New Zealand on one side of the spectrum, where they say that, you know, and based on court cases, if it's that a GMO is defined very broadly and includes all gene-edited products. And so they have the same regulation and a relatively precautionary type of regulation where there aren't a lot of those products allowed onto the market. Now, the next statement I make, you may be surprised about, but the United States also treats GMOs and gene editing the same. And I'm going to repeat that. The United States also treats GMOs and gene editing the same, but they do it in a fairly permissive way. And so, you know, for our U.S. Department of Agriculture, they treat GMOs and gene editing the same, but most of those products are excluded from oversight. And so they exclude many gene-edited products, but they also exclude many GM products, that what countries would consider GM. Similarly, the Food and Drug Administration has a voluntary consultation process for GM products. That same consultation process applies to gene-edited products. So they treat them the same. The result is very different than the European Union, but they treat them the same. And then we have a lot of countries that do case-by-case, where, as Martin said, some products may be in the end a GMO and other products may in the end not be a GMO. But I would caution you that the devil's in the details, and that many of those systems that may look on the same are not. So Japan has a system that's actually quite different than the Argentinian system. Australia has a case-by-case system that's very different than the Japanese system. That's also very different from the Argentinian system. And so you could have a product, the same product, go through those 3 regulatory systems, and in some cases they would be considered a GMO, in other cases they'd be considered gene editing. So you really have to look at the details. I'm not aware of any country that doesn't have any special regulation for any gene-edited product. There's at least some gene-edited products that are regulated specially, and many of those are also products where they may be regulated specially in the development stage, in the research stage, but not necessarily in the commercial development stage. So you also have to look at this at the process at which the product is in the development stage. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I think Martin mentioned it, about animals. And Argentina is good. Their regulatory system does treat gene-edited animals and plants the same. But many of the maps you saw yesterday about countries and where they're at, they've really only been developing policies around plants, not around animals. And, you know, I try to look at things scientifically, and I don't know, is there a scientific justification to treat gene-edited animals differently than gene-edited plants? Are they being treated differently because of policy considerations or socioeconomic considerations? It's not really clear, but for some reason, many of the policies that are developing and regulations that are developing around gene-edited are only being developed for plants and not being developed for animals. And I know that for many people in the room, you know, animals are a big part of agriculture. They're a big part of people's diets. They're also a big part of the solution for things like sustainability and climate change and so forth. So that's something to think about. I know yesterday, Martin talked a little bit about regional harmonization, and I think that's been fairly successful. I think Godwin yesterday mentioned a call for international harmonization or greater harmonization. My assessment is, you know, in the short term, that's pretty unlikely. I think the likelihood of the US and the EU coming to agreement on how these products should be regulated is quite slim. So I think there is some potential for some regional harmonization, but I think in the short term, there really isn't an ability for international harmonization. And if there was, it would be lowest common denominator, which would probably be more precautionary than many countries would like. So I'm not sure that would really be successful. So where do I think things go in the future? I mean, I think all gene-edited products should be regulated proportionate to their potential risk. And so, you know, we saw things about deletions, substitutions, additions. You can do it in one time. You can do it multiple times. You can do it on multiple chromosomes. There are lots of different phenotypes and lots of different traits, and we really should be looking at the phenotype and the trait, not the technique that's been used. And so, you know, I believe we should move more towards a science-based regulatory system where we look at the product, not the process. Most of the regulatory systems and most of the policies so far on gene editing are more process-based. If it's like conventional breeding, then maybe it's not regulated, but conventional breeding is a process, and SDN1 or SDN2 is a process. It's not really looking at the product. So I think a truly product-based regulatory system would regulate all agricultural products based on the phenotype. So if you had a pesticidal trait, it would be regulated potentially as a pesticide because it had pesticidal trait. If it has an herbicide-tolerant trait, then maybe if there's issues about weed resistance, that might be an issue one would look at. And so I think that's, I hope, the goal that many countries will get to, but we're not there yet. So that's sort of my assessment of where things are internationally at this stage.
Thank you very much for the experience. And I hope the ground noted that COMESA has offered an opportunity to move forward very quickly. I would want to hear from African Union with the further answers, short and clear. How soon can we have gene editing regulations for Africa? Genomic editing regulations. We have the GMO already developed. How soon can we have the gene editing regulation?
In 2019, the African Union member countries called for a genome editing guideline. And I'm glad to say that the reason why I came late, the meeting for submission of this guidance document is being done now in South Africa to the African panel of experts on emerging technologies. So that means that after they approve, then soon, maybe estimate 1 month or 2 months, it will be approved by the AUC, then you can receive it, yes. So today they are meeting on that guidance document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And a quick comment from the floor? 1, 2. And we don't have time, so we'll take just 2.
Yeah. So my name is Emmanuel from IATF. I'm a bit disturbed about the emphasis on genome editing from the regulatory point of view. So what happens to the focus and attention on resolving regulatory issues for GM? And, you know, for breeders, you don't use only one tool to breed. You combine tools to breed. We did that in Tela, and that's why Tela is performing very well. So I foresee a situation where even if you use several molecular tools, like molecular markers based on different strategies, then you put genome editing, and then for some reasons, you may not find all the traits you want in a germplasm, and you want to use GM to develop an advanced product. So what are we saying here? What is the way forward towards improving regulations around GM products? That is very fundamental. So it cannot be a genome-edited crop alone. We've seen the combination of technology. So are we giving up on improving the regulations around GM? That is my question. It's never an alternative. It's never. So the question is, what do we do around improving regulations for GM technology? Thank you.
Thank you, Florence Wambugu, Africa Harvest. My question is directed to Dr. Silas Obukosia. And it's about, and in fact, we should be thinking seriously about this because we now have Africa Trade. Beauty Commerce, the Africa Trade is the latest big leapfrog decision being made by African leaders to remove the barriers at the bottleneck so we can trade together in Africa. And see, maybe, I hope you know that the African trade is about 15%, whereas in Europe, it's 68%. And so we stop trading because what you find is a francophone trade with from a francophone in Europe, the East Africa, the British trade with the European. So now we try to trade among ourselves. And the biggest challenge we had before with GM technology is that we are fearing if we adopt GM, we might lose our business in Europe. So here we have a great opportunity to trade between East, West, Central, North, South of Africa. Now, what is the office doing? And I know that's a great, what you have just commented now about passing this by the ministers of Africa, is a great thing, achievement. So how does that going to link up with the African trade to help boost the trade in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will let all questions be answered by, no, I said 2 questions. We don't have time, sorry. But I think you can write questions so that our rapporteur capture them. And you can interact with the panel to have answers. So I will just give 20 seconds for each to say a word before Dr. Seras responds to the 2 questions. Starting with Dr. Martin. Just 2 seconds, say anything?
Yes, I spoke so quickly that, first of all, I forgot to thank the government of Rwanda, the AUDA NIPAD, and the AITF for the opportunity of being here. So I want to thank for that. As I was saying, these technologies are new to regulators, but are not new to science. The underlying tools for their analysis are available. We must sort out now the regulatory and the legal aspects. Unfortunately, regulations are cannot be completely based on science. I also wish that we have systems purely based on the traits and the risks, but we have Cartagena protocol, we have a system for non-GMOs and a system for GMOs, and that's quite unlikely to change in the near future. So we need to work with what we have in the overall regulation and make that work as much as possible based on science, so these products are not over-regulated, and therefore we can take advantage of their benefits in the future. Thank you.
Dr. John, please, quickly.
Yeah, I think for COMESA, we have already a policy on biotechnology and biosafety. So we haven't done a lot of work in the last 2-3 years. So we want to move this one forward in collaboration with the AATF, ISA, SARECA, and other partners. And then on the genome editing, what we're thinking is that we have to work also with AUDA NEPAT, because the continental free trade area will need to have practical regulations or guidelines on genome editing in order for them to participate fully. Otherwise, without these guidelines being put in place at commercial level, it will be difficult to take them at Africa, level. And then lastly, I want to say is that I think for COMESA, the first time we are attending this kind of conference, I think the last 2-3 years. So we are looking forward that we can maybe make some decision to the ministers based on what is going to come up tomorrow. Thank you.
Dr. Faustin, yes?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, our moderator. Genome editing technology, as my predecessor said, are new to the regulators, but not new to the science, as Professor Martin said. However, technology are there, and we are ready to embrace technology in order to develop ourselves. So Rwanda has confirmed that they will still use the precautionary approach, even though we are going to embrace technology. We need to assess the risk, but we need to develop the capacity so that we will not say no just for saying no, but we need to know the implications of yes and the implications of no. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Margaret, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I would say, just 3 things. One is that we have already seen regulation has a powerful impact on innovation. So the way we craft our regulatory systems for genome editing and including genetic modification will either make us progress or completely block the ideas, the innovations, the investments. Number 2, the framing of the genome editing narrative is so important, because we've seen a trend where it is being framed as either or, and that's exactly what Emmanuel is saying. And that is going to be dangerous, because we need all tools, and this is an additional tool. It's not replacing, it is not coming to remove the barriers that we had. The only issue here is how best we utilize the regulatory system to spur innovation and spur investment. This is going to be very key in the way we communicate about genome editing. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gregor?
Yes, I was very interested in the comment from the back of the room, and it really brings up the point, I think, that Martin also said, that laws and regulations aren't always science-based, and especially it's hard to have, we have to define things, and the laws and regulations define things legally. They don't always define them scientifically. And so as long as we do things based on processes or other types of definitions, there's always going to be a difference between that and what happens in the laboratory, where many techniques and many things are done. So I think the hope is that we have regulatory systems that learn and change and modify as they learn more. And so hopefully that's the best kind of regulatory system that has that flexibility to make those changes, so that we don't over-regulate things that don't need to be over-regulated, because that is a waste of society's resources.
Thank you. Dr. Seras, respond to the
Thank you
comments.
much. Emmanuel, if I heard your question right, you seem to ask that what are you doing with the biosafety regulations, isn't it? And the answer is that the ABNA program led by Dr. Jeremy and the ADA NEPAD is still building functional biosafety regulated systems in Africa, so that African member union countries can make sovereign decisions about adopting biotechnology. And we believe the conventional technologies, the biotechnologies, and the genome editing technologies are complementary for transformation of Africa. Maybe I just give you one example. Zambia today is revising its policy to make it enabling biotechnology and biosafety policy, to make it enabling for biotechnology. After the policy is revised, there will be revision of the Biosafety Act to make it enabling for technology development. So the support of biotechnology in Africa is still going on, and many countries are changing. The success you are seeing in Ethiopia, where they have got BT cotton, they now have got drought-tolerant maize and insect resistance, and recently they have got cotton that is resistant to insects combined with herbicides. It's because Ethiopia, with the support of ADA, NEPAD, and other partners, revised its policies, and also laws, yes. Policies, I think, are called directives, and laws are called maybe proclamations. And that's why you find Africa is now commercializing products here. So we are moving with them hand in hand here. In fact, yes, yeah, so let me stop there. Now, there was a very interesting question that was raised by Dr. Florence here. But the interesting thing is that countries must first of all develop functional biosafety regulatory systems. Then it's those functional biosafety regulatory systems that now we can harmonize under using the regs here. And the most advanced harmonization in biosafety is done by ECOWAS. And so that is the way actually. So now when it comes to genome editing, countries will have first of all to develop guidelines for their own genome editing. Then when they have developed guidelines, then now the COMESA will come in and harmonize those so that we can now stimulate trade across different African countries. Yes. As John told us, that is already working in the conventional seed systems. So we don't see why it should not equally work in biotech crops and in genome editing crops. Yes. Now, what are the emerging trends of genome editing in Africa? What are we seeing? Yes. I use the word science-based, but what that means is that when we share information with countries, we have been in Malawi, we have been in Swatini, we have been in Burkina Faso, and then we have been also in Nigeria. It is coming out that those products that are equivalent to the conventional crops should be regulated under conventional laws. Those products that have got an intermediate GMO, that GMO should be regulated under the biosafety law. Then when the GMO part has been removed and confirmed, then they are regulated under the conventional laws of seed systems here. And those products, which seem to be rare, that are done by genome editing and come out as GMO, fall under the Biosafety Act. And I agree with my colleagues there. After using that science, some countries globally always put in socio-economic considerations here. For example, you can't deploy a crop just because it's genome edited while it's undercutting your economy. That's the issue of socio-economic considerations here. And thank you very much, and I will stop there. Thank you.
And that marks the end of our panel discussion. Thank you for your great attention.
Thank you, Dr. Filbert. Thank you to the panelists. Give them another hand of applause, please. Thank you. You can get back to your seats, yes. Thank you. Thanks. Quickly, a few housekeeping information. We have developed a Mentimeter poll to capture participants' feedback and evaluation of different aspects of this event that started yesterday, that ends tomorrow. The link will be shared via email and also projected. So we request all participants, if possible, to participate in this poll. This marks our first break. We go outside for coffee break. We'll be back here in 20 minutes. So by 11:50, let's be back here for the next session. Thank you.
Cotton is one of the most important cash crops in Malawi, and it is identified as a priority crop under Malawi's Growth Development Strategy 3. It involves 250,000 farming families in Malawi, with an average of 5 people in each family. What does that mean? 1 million people in a country with just a population of 18 million people. Cotton producers are struggling to meet the demands of the textile industry, and cotton industry is almost collapsing. That means massive loss of jobs and livelihood. Now in 2018 comes a solution, BT Cotton. Listen to this video on how it's going to be a game changer in Malawi.
Cotton is recognized as a significant priority crop by the MGDS, that's the Malawi Growth Development Strategy 3, as well as the SWAP, or Agriculture Sector-Wide Approach. It is considered a priority crop. Even in the National Export Strategy, cotton as an oil crop is also considered a priority crop. So it receives priority in terms of the different institutions within Malawi. It contributes GDP roughly about 10 to 15%. In fact, we're estimating that about 40,000 Malawians are directly engaged in the cotton industry, apart from the farmers alone, but other players coming into the sector, creating employment.
The importance of cotton at a household level, there are so many. One that it is easy to handle. Of course, we know when you're growing, you have to make sure that you manage the pests there. And if you're putting a very good plan, you manage the pests, it gives you a very good yield, it's easy because that's already available income at household level. Definitely that would improve people's lives when they've got money at hand. And also at household level, the way I see with cotton, one another advantage is, these are like shrubs, groups of crops. They give space to what we call crop diversification. So that time that you've grown and they're growing there, they give space that you can do other agriculture activities. You can grow other crops.
Cotton is very important to me in the sense that as an income generating activity, particularly farming, when we look at cotton, this is the crop that we rely much. Like for the 2020-2021 growing season, the produce that I got, when I sowed, I got about 7 million Malawi kwacha. So from that money that I realized, I've used it for paying some school fees for my little brothers, as well as I would like to venture into other businesses from the profits that I got from this farming season.
The road to have this BT cotton now even tested by the farmers has been quite long, because as you know, in many countries, when it comes to GMOs, people are a bit apprehensive of those technologies. And the role of the Commission has been to advocate for even the start of the trials. Initially, worked closely with research station, Chitezi Research Station, and also the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and where and the various stakeholders and even the Environmental Affairs Department to come up with Biosafety Act, because people were apprehensive. They thought we don't have the capacity, we can't grow this, we don't know what is going to be effect. So the Commission has played a key role of coordinating all those efforts.
When BT came in as a country, it was like one of the key solutions to the challenges in the cotton industry. So in terms of the regulatory part, the journey was very smooth. We did all the biosafety issues, all the risk assessment, all the concerns which other groups of people were voicing out, and we addressed them, and some of the concerns were addressed through the conditions which were given to the permits for the developer of the technology. So it was smooth until we reached the general release, when for us we deregulated the BT cotton.
In terms of pest and disease resistance, the BT2 is more resistant compared to the previous local one. As well as if we talk of the productivity itself, when you grow an acre, in the previous growing seasons, before I started the BT2, I used to get about 4 to 5 bales from 1 acre. That is weighing 100 kgs. While this time around, using the same piece of land, that is 1 acre, like this season, I could get 8 to 10 bales from 1 acre. So you can see that it's almost double yield that is being realized from the same field.
As a country, we rely mainly on the smallholder farmer. So if the smallholder farmers, produce and then sell, he himself or herself is assisted in terms of cash, which they can use for their day-to-day living. In addition, when the produce is exported outside the country, the country also, has forex, from outside the country. This is why before, cotton production was really emphasized, and it was a must. People have to follow the regulations. But I think after that era, there was a slack. This is why we have had all these challenges, coming in. Now we are saying, can we go back? So we have to begin to sensitize, our farmers that no, I think this is the right way to go.
Now the challenge for farmers is they think the seed is a little expensive, and there has to be some modalities to work how we can reduce the seed price. I can understand that one of the reasons why it is a little expensive is we are importing the seed. So I think we should be able, with capacity building, to start maybe producing the seed right in the country, locally. That will help in terms of reducing the price of the seed. The other thing that we should do to sustain this is to make sure that we synchronize demand and supply.
In an ideal situation, we should be producing enough seed cotton for the genes to be operating even 9 months in a year. At the moment, the genes are only operating maybe 1 to 2 months in the whole year. The rest of the year, they are lying idle. It's not a very effective way of using resources. So we have to enhance the production across the country to utilize those resources more effectively.
When it comes to us now, as the users, as a GINA, it means more employment, because you have more buyers fanning out to buy the seed and then bringing it into the factory to gene. That's another employment. Then you move from there to the factory where we are going to do the spinning and weaving. As I said earlier on, the spinning alone is 45% of the whole establishment. It means now you're employing 45% of the staff. So job creation is there. Poverty alleviation, you've done away with it. At least by Malawi standards, I am employed, but there are 10 people on average. So if you take that 45%, you bring them in on board, it means you have multiplied it by 10 for the farmers. So that you have improved them. Besides that, you have made the company continue non-stop production. So there will be no downtime. Then everything goes. And then the cycle continues. And if the cycle continues, again, by extension, the retailer who's buying the cloth from me will also sell to somebody else, and he makes money as well. But if I can't supply him enough, he will not have enough to supply.
We do not want to be caught up in a situation where we have to import lint. Therefore, we are compelled to scale up the production. And we are looking at the BT cotton really as the solution to this. As I said, with the limited area, we have to enhance the productivity. We'll be looking at engaging Makoka, bring in other germplasms which can actually drive us from 4 tons to a higher level, maybe up to 8 tons per hectare. And I also mentioned, we're also seriously looking at the stacked gene so that we can also reduce the impact of weeds on yields. As I said, 40% of yield reduction is due to weed competition. So we are looking really at stacked genes here so that we can now move at smallholder farmer level from 2 tons to a possible 4 tons per hectare. That turns around the whole industry.
Cotton is one of the most important cash crops in Malawi, and it is identified as a priority crop under Malawi's Growth Development Strategy 3. It involves 250,000 farming families in Malawi, with an average of 5 people in each family. What does that mean? 1 million people in a country with just a population of 18 million people. Cotton producers are struggling to meet the demands of the textile industry, and cotton industry is almost collapsing. That means massive loss of jobs and livelihood. Now in 2018 comes a solution, BT Cotton. Listen to this video on how it's going to be a game changer in Malawi.
Cotton is recognized as a significant priority crop by the MGDS, that's the Malawi Growth Development Strategy 3, as well as the SWAP, or Agriculture Sector-Wide Approach. It is considered a priority crop. Even in the National Export Strategy, cotton as an oil crop is also considered a priority crop. So it receives priority in terms of the different institutions within Malawi. It contributes GDP roughly about 10 to 15%. In fact, we're estimating that about 40,000 Malawians are directly engaged in the cotton industry, apart from the farmers alone, but other players coming into the sector, creating employment.
The importance of cotton at a household level, there are so many. One that it is easier to handle. Of course, we know when you grow it, you have to make sure that you manage the pests there. And if you're putting a very good plan, you manage the pests, it gives you a very good yield, it's easy because that's already available income at household level. Definitely that would improve people's lives when they've got money at hand. And also at household level, the way I see with cotton, one another advantage is these are like shrubs, groups of crops. They give space to what we call crop diversification. So that time that you've grown and they are growing there, they give space that you can do other agriculture activities. You can grow other crops.
Cotton is very important to me in the sense that as an income generating activity, particularly farming, when we look at cotton, this is the crop that we rely much. Like for the 2020-2021 growing season, the produce that I got, when I sold, I got about 7 million Malawi kwacha. So from that money that I realized, I've used it for paying some school fees for my little brothers, as well as I would like to venture into other businesses from the profits that I got from this farming season.
The road to have this BT cotton now even tested by the farmers has been quite long, because as you know, in many countries, when it comes to GMOs, people are a bit apprehensive of those technologies. And the role of the Commission has been to advocate for even the start of the trials. Initially, worked closely with research station, State Research Station, and also the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and where and the various stakeholders and even the Environmental Affairs Department to come up with Biosafety Act, because people were apprehensive. They thought we don't have the capacity, we can't grow this, we don't know what is going to be effect. So the Commission has played a key role of coordinating all those efforts.
When BT came in as a country, it was like one of the key solutions to the challenges in the cotton industry. So in terms of the regulatory part, the journey was very smooth. We did all the biosafety issues, all the risk assessment, all the concerns which other groups of people were voicing out, and we addressed them, and some of the concerns were addressed through the conditions which were given to the permits for the developer of the technology. So it was smooth until we reached the general release when for us we deregulated the BT cotton.
In terms of pest and disease resistance, the BT2 is more resistant compared to the previous local one. As well as if we talk of the productivity itself, when you grow an acre, in the previous growing seasons, before I started the BT2, I used to get about 4 to 5 bales from 1 acre. That is weighing 100 kgs. While this time around, using the same piece of land, that is 1 acre, like this season, I could get 8 to 10 bales from 1 acre. So you can see that it's almost double yield that is being realized from the same field.
As a country, we rely mainly on the smallholder farmer. So if the smallholder farmers produce and then sell, he himself or herself is assisted in terms of cash, which they can use for their day-to-day living. In addition, when the produce is exported outside the country, the country also has forex from outside the country. This is why before, cotton production was really emphasized, and it was a must. People have to follow the regulations. But I think after that era, there was a slack. This is why we have had all these challenges coming in. Now we are saying, can we go back? So we have to begin to sensitize our farmers that no, I think this is the right way to go.
Now the challenge for farmers is they think the seed is a little expensive, and there has to be some modalities to work how we can reduce the seed price. I can understand that one of the reasons why it is a little expensive is we are importing the seed. So I think we should be able, with the capacity building, to start maybe producing the seed right in the country, locally. That will help in terms of reducing the price of the seed. The other thing that we should do to sustain this is to make sure that we synchronize demand and supply.
In an ideal situation, we should be producing enough seed cotton for the genes to be operating even 9 months in a year. At the moment, the genes are only operating maybe 1 to 2 months in the whole year. The rest of the year, they are lying idle. It's not a very effective way of using resources. So we have to enhance the production across the country to utilize those resources more effectively.
When it comes to us now, as the users, as a GINA, it means more employment because you have more buyers fanning out to buy the seed and then bringing it into the factory to gene, that's another employment. Then you move from there to the factory where we are going to do the spinning and weaving. As I said earlier on, the spinning alone is 45% of the whole establishment. It means now you're employing 45% of the staff. So job creation is there. Poverty alleviation, you've done away with it. At least by Malawi standards, I am employed, but there are 10 people on average. So if you take that 45%, you bring them in on board, it means you have multiplied it by 10 for the farmers. So that you have improved them. Besides that, you have made the company continue non-stop production. So there will be no downtime. Then everything goes. Then the cycle continues. And if the cycle continues, again, by extension, the retailer who's buying the cloth from me will also sell to somebody else, and he makes money as well. But if I can't supply him enough, he will not have enough to supply.
We do not want to be caught up in a situation where we have to import lint. Therefore, we are compelled to scale up the production. And we are looking at the BT cotton really as the solution to this. As I said, with the limited area, we have to enhance the productivity. We'll be looking at engaging Makoka, bring in other germplasms which can actually drive us from 4 tons to higher level, maybe up to 8 tons per hectare. And I also mentioned, we're also seriously looking at the stacked gene so that we can also reduce the impact of weeds on yields. As I said, 40% of yield reduction is due to weed competition. So we are looking really at stacked genes here so that we can now move at smallholder farmer level from 2 tons to a possible 4 tons per hectare. That turns around the whole industry in Malawi.
Cotton is one of the most important cash crops in Malawi, and it is identified as a priority crop under Malawi's Growth Development Strategy 3. It involves 250,000 farming families in Malawi, with an average of 5 people in each family. What does that mean? 1 million people in a country with just a population of 18 million people. Cotton producers are struggling to meet the demands of the textile industry, and cotton industry is almost collapsing. That means massive loss of jobs and livelihood. Now in 2018 comes a solution, BT Cotton. Listen to this video on how it's going to be a game changer in Malawi.
Cotton is recognized as a significant priority crop by the MGDS, that's the Malawi Growth Development Strategy 3, as well as the SWAP, or Agriculture Sector Wide Approach. It is considered a priority crop. Even in the National Export Strategy, cotton as an oil crop is also considered a priority crop. So it receives priority in terms of the different institutions within Malawi. It contributes GDP roughly about 10 to 15%. In fact, we're estimating that about 40,000 Malawians are directly engaged in the cotton industry, apart from the farmers alone, but other players coming into the sector, creating employment.
The importance of cotton at a household level, there are so many. One that it is easy to handle. Of course, we know when you're growing, you have to make sure that you manage the pests there. And if you're putting a very good plan, you manage the pests, it gives you a very good yield. It's easy because that's already available income at household level. Definitely that would improve people's lives when they've got money at hand. And also at household level, the way I see with cotton, one another advantage is these are like shrubs, groups of crops. They give space to what we call crop diversification. So that time that you've grown and they're growing there, they give space that you can do other agriculture activities. You can grow other crops.
Cotton is very important to me in the sense that as an income generating activity, particularly farming, when we look at cotton, this is the crop that we rely much. Like for the 2020-2021 growing season, the produce that I got, when I sowed, I got about 7 million Malawi kwacha. So from that money that I realized, I've used it for paying some school fees for my little brothers, as well as I would like to venture into other businesses from the profits that I got from this farming season.
The road to have this BT cotton now even tested by the farmers has been quite long, because as you know, in many countries, when it comes to GMOs, people are a bit apprehensive of those technologies. And the role of the Commission has been to advocate for even the start of the trials. Initially, worked closely with research station, Chitezi Research Station, and also the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and where and the various stakeholders and even the Environmental Affairs Department to come up with Biosafety Act, because people were apprehensive They thought we don't have the capacity, we can't grow this, we don't know what is going to be effect. So the Commission has played a key role of coordinating all those efforts.
When BT came in as a country, it was like one of the key solutions to the challenges in the cotton industry. So in terms of the regulatory part, the journey was very smooth. We did all the biosafety issues, all the risk assessment, all the concerns which other groups of people were voicing out. And we addressed them, and some of the concerns were addressed through the conditions which were given to the permits for the developer of the technology. So it was smooth until we reached the general release, when for us we deregulated the BT cotton.
In terms of pests and disease resistance, the BT2 is more resistant compared to the previous local one. As well as if we talk of the productivity itself, when you grow an acre, in the previous growing seasons, before I started the BT2, I used to get about 4 to 5 bales from 1 acre. That is weighing 100 kgs. While this time around, using the same piece of land, that is 1 acre, like this season, I could get 8 to 10 bales from 1 acre. So you can see that it's almost double yield that is being realized from the same field.
As a country, we rely mainly on the smallholder farmer. So if the smallholder farmers produce and then sell, he himself or herself is assisted in terms of cash, which they can use for their day-to-day living. In addition, when the produce is exported outside the country, the country also has forex from outside the country. This is why before, cotton production was really emphasized, and it was a must. People have to follow the regulations. But I think after that era, there was a slack. This is why we have had all these challenges coming in. Now we are saying, can we go back? So we have to begin to sensitize our farmers that no, I think this is the right way to go.
Now the challenge for farmers is they think the seed is a little expensive, and there has to be some modalities to work how we can reduce the seed price. I can understand that one of the reasons why it is a little expensive is we are importing the seed. So I think we should be able, with a capacity building, to start maybe producing the seed right in the country, locally. That will help in terms of reducing the price of the seed. The other thing that we should do to sustain this is to make sure that we synchronize demand and supply.
In an ideal situation, we should be producing enough seed cotton for the genes to be operating even 9 months in a year. At the moment, the genes are only operating maybe 1 to 2 months.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please get back to our seats. Those who are at the back of the room, kindly come closer, move closer to the front, get your seats, and then everybody else that's still outside, if you could please come inside. If our ushering team, if our ushers could help us bring them back in, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Rufus Ibigba, the Director General of National Biosecurity Management Agency.
Ladies and gentlemen, those at the back of the room, please make your way closer to the front. Thank you. A quick reminder for those who need to be doing their COVID test that you need to leave right now. If you are to get your test, you need to leave right at this moment. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now move to the next session. Before we do that, housekeeping information again. AUDA NEPAD requests all scientists in the room to wait for approximately 10 minutes after this session, this upcoming session in the room. They will be told why. So all scientists here in the room after this upcoming session, please stay in the room for approximately 10 minutes. Okay. Let me call the next session. It's Biotechnology Deregulation in Africa, Experiences from Nigeria Room. The chair is Professor Frederick Ouattara, Minister of Science of Burkina Faso. Professor.
Morning, everybody. We can continue our session program with Biotechnology Deregulation in Africa, Experiences from Nigeria Room. The speaker is Dr. Rufus Ebegba, Director General, NBMR from Nigeria. He was talking with us virtually, I think. Is it? Okay. And for discussion, I need here to come with me Professor Abdullahi Mustafa, Director General, NIBD Nigeria. Is inside? Okay. The second discussant is Dr. Martin Ogolgo, Executive Secretary, UNCST, Uganda. Thank you. Mrs. Ellen Kariurura, Senior Planning Officer, NBA Kenya. Where is she? Okay. And the last discussion is Olalekan Akimbo Center for Excellence, STI Hub, IUDA, and NEPAD. Okay. For planning of this discussion session, I will give to the speaker maybe 35 minutes, and for discussion, each must have 80 minutes, me also 80 minutes. It become 1 hour and a quarter. It left 30 minutes for discussion. So, speaker, doctor, you have a talk for now.
Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Rufus Ebegba, the Director General of National Biosecurity Management Agency in Nigeria. I have my presentation is as seen on the screen. I will share my presentation right away now. The title of my presentation is about Biotechnology Deregulation in Africa, experience from Nigeria. So I will be going through the various experiences we've gathered over the years in our deregulation process. The outline of my presentation is introduction, brief on Nigeria's regulatory system, application permit processes for commercial release. And we'll be looking at some of the crops that were already granted approval for commercial release, the cowpea, the cotton, maize, and also monitoring and inspection, challenges, and conclusion. I start with the introduction. Biotechnology and its tools offer great potentials to enhance agricultural productivity, food and nutritional security, and livelihoods of millions of Africans. It's on this note that the federal government of Nigeria has adopted modern biotechnology as one of the tools to drive the economy, particularly in the agricultural sector. At the same time, the federal government of Nigeria has equally adopted the gains of the technology through safe modern biotechnology application. From all indications, modern biotechnology has the potential to offer benefit in the area of pest resistance, high protein and vitamin content in foods, drug development and grown as plant products, drought resistant, cold tolerance, higher yield in crops, and some other benefits. In Africa, commercialization of GMOs in Africa has been found to have taken place in some of the countries, which are Eswatini, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Sudan, and South Africa. Nigeria as a country recently also approved one crop which has been so special to the Nigeria economy, in the nutrition aspect of feeding. There is the cowpea. This cowpea is known as a common poor man's meat in Nigeria, and is very critical to our nutritional value. However, there are some concerns in the introduction of genetically modified organisms globally, and Nigeria also has such concerns. These concerns and the environmental issues, which includes invasiveness, non-target effects, weediness, pathogenicity, gene flow, among others. We also have concern in the area of food safety, which in the area of allergenicity and possibility of causing toxins when genetically modified organisms are consumed. However, these concerns, the essence of biosafety is to ensure that these concerns do not really manifest. The issue, we also have socioeconomic concerns in approving in the regulation of genetically modified crops. These socio-economic concerns sometimes border in the area of, is the technology safe for humans, plants, and animals? Is it ethical to alter the genetic composition of any living thing? Is GM technology a more environmentally friendly technology that reduces use of harmful chemicals or erosion and fuel consumption? Is GM technology the solution to world hunger and the patent of living things, which environmentalists and soldiers or some other civil rights groups have questioned? Why do we need to regulate GMOs in Nigeria? It's irrespective of the tremendous benefits associated with the modern biotechnology application and the use of its products, which are genetically modified. There are fears that this technology, if it's not properly regulated, will cause harm and particularly manifest those concerns that I earlier on spoke about. The issue of biosafety has become pertinent to address these various fears which are earlier on enumerated. Biosafety simply means the application of laws, policies, regulations, guidelines, knowledge, technology measures, equipment, and procedures to ensure that potential risks associated with modern biotechnology and its products are minimized, eliminated, or not made existence as a whole. So the Nigerian regulatory system is tailored towards the potentials of biosafety, to ensuring that the application of modern biotechnology is done in a safe manner to human health, to the environment, in the area of ensuring that modern biotechnology and the use of these products are not harmful to the sustainable use of biological diversity, taking into account risks to human health. The essence of biosafety generally, as I said earlier on, is to reduce and eliminate the potential risks resulting from modern biotechnology applications and the use and handling of these products, and to ensure sustainable development in the application of modern biotechnology so that sustainability will continue to perpetuate. Nigerian regulatory system. The Nigerian regulatory system commences officially with the enactment of the National Biosafety Management Agency Act of 2015. This act gave various mandates, vision, and mission to the agency. And the mandate of the National Biosafety Management Agency, which came out of the act, is the National Biosafety Management Agency is charged with the responsibility of providing regulatory framework, institutional administrative mechanism for safety measures in the application of modern biotechnology and use and handling of GMOs in Nigeria. The vision of the agency is to ensure that the practice, processes, and procedures of modern biotechnology is undertaken within the limits of a regulatory system that guarantees its safe use, protects Nigerian biodiversity, and provides minimal risks to human health, animal, plants, and the environment in general. The mission is to promote the basic tenets of biosafety, as indicated in the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, and to enforce Nigerian National Biosafety Management Agency Act 2015. The National Biosafety Management Agency Act of 2015, as amended in 2019, empowers the agency, the National Biosafety Management Agency, to provide regulatory framework, institutional administrative mechanism for effective measures in the application of modern biotechnology in Nigeria, with a view to preventing any outright effects on human health, animal, plants, and the environment, as well as ensuring biosecurity. The National Biosafety Management Agency, with the mandate given to it by the Act, has the mandate fairly to regulate the various activities, events relating to application of modern biotechnology. These include containment facilities where GMOs are being developed, confined field trials, like experimental fields, and also multi-locational trials of various ecological zones. It also regulates on-farm demonstration involving living modified organisms, and also ensure that before any genetically modified organism is commercialized, due diligence in the area of safety is carried out to ensure that these products are safe to the environment and human health, and they also confirm safety to the environment. Processes leading to GM events deregulation in Nigeria. This process starts from the laboratory containment facility where GMOs are being developed, also in the greenhouses, confined field trials, full-scale, full safety assessment, and environmental assessment, and leading to the general release of genetically modified organisms. The National Biosafety Procedure for Laboratory Research is very key. One thing we do before, if within the country, any institution in Nigeria that intends to do genetic engineering, such institution must be accredited, and the containment facility in the laboratory is also certified. There are terms and conditions attached to that. The procedure for approval for GMOs, whether for confined field trial, for containment use, and for commercialization, the procedure is similar. The first thing is the submission of an application by the applicant to the National Biosafety Management, and the acknowledgement of the application within 90 days. But there's a regulation that has put that should be done within 21 days. Then the checklisting of such application is carried out internally at the National Biosafety Management. And then following that, there are publications in 3 national dailies to inform the members of the public and other stakeholders that there's an application on GMO on a particular product. Because of the make comments, submit comments to the National Biosecurity Management Agency on whatever they feel about the application, particularly if they feel the application, the product will not be safe to human health and the environment. And that once that is taken, take a look at it critically, which enables us to form our decision. There's also National Biosafety Committee and Sub-National Biosafety Technical Committee. These 2 committees work in parallel independently to review application dossiers, to confirm whether the products will be safe, whether the relevant documents that are submitted, they are reliable as well. Once this committee completes the application process, the report is sent to the National Biosafety Management. There are various reports sent to the National Biosafety Management. Incidentally, the meeting, the review process of the 2 committees take place at about the same time. But at the end of the National Biosafety Technical Subcommittee, which normally completes its assignment before the end of the National Biosafety Management Agency review process, the report is forwarded to the National Biosafety Committee to form part of the committee's discussion and the recommendation. But once that is done, once the National Biosafety Committee submits its report, one critical thing we try to do in the area of commercial release is that before any member of the National Biosafety Committee, but the committees are ad hoc, once they are appointed, during the process of the meeting, each member of the committee signs a form known as no conflict of interest form to make it transparent so that applicants who have vested interest in any application will be excluded from the process of biosafety application and the review process. So once that is done and the committee members sign their report there and there and submit to the National Biosafety Management Agency through the Chief Executive. While that is going on, the Chief Executive takes a critical look in turn with his team to ensure that the committee has done what needs to be done. I will also take a critical look whether the committee has actually done the right thing. That is the decision of whether to approve or not to approve lies in the agency, and basically the Chief Executive takes such responsibility to sign approvals or rejections. And if there's an approval, a decision document is prepared. And the decision document is prepared in addition with certificate of permit is also issued to the applicant. The decision document contains the terms and conditions attached to the permit. And let me also talk about the issue of gene editing. If any genetically modified product is gene edited, the parameter that is being used, because the law, the amendment of the Act in 2019, says that any institution that will carry out gene editing must obtain approval from the National Biosafety Management Agency. In view of that, all applications, anyone that intends to do gene editing in Nigeria, filing a notification and sends in documents to confirm whether the gene edited products, the process used in achieving the gene edited products. There are 3 processes we consider. If the product is edited without insertion of any foreign gene on transgene, or if there's a transgene that was used in conferring the editing on a particular product, or if there are transgenes that were used and in the final product the transgene does not contain the product does not contain the transgene. And also, if it does not contain the transgene, these 2 first, if it's without a transgene, what we'll simply do in that case, if it does not contain the transgene, that is, first of all, the gene editing did not use any transgene. And if it uses a transgene and the transgene is not contained in the final product, such is exempted from full biosafety process. Clearance is given to enable the applicant to carry out further processes leading to his release of his product by other relevant agencies that may require approval from. But if the transgene is contained in the final product, a full regulatory process, review process is carried out, just like any GMO application. And again, once you look at the Nigerian case, as earlier said, we have granted 3 permits. One is the commercialization of genetically modified cotton, which is Boga 2, which was initially filed, the approval was granted to Monsanto, but right now it has been transferred to Bayer. That was the first commercial crop Nigeria approved. We have also approved cowpea, which was the confined feed trial took place in Nigeria, up to the process of getting to commercialization level. That is also for insect resistant to Maruca, insect pest resistance. That approval is granted to the Institute of Agricultural Research in this area. Then another one is telomerase, STARC gene for tolerance to drought and insect resistance. So this is STARC gene. We have also granted this approval to Institute of Agricultural Research in collaboration with AATF. The BT cotton, there are 2 varieties that we approved. The National Varietal Release Committee, after the approval by the National Biosecurity Management Agency, the Varietal Release Committee also does some other approval to meet the viability of make sure that the vigor of the final product is in line with every particular variety with these characteristics, which must have higher level than any existing variety of such species. The telomerase was actually approved for confined feed trial in 2019, and went through the process for commercialization in the year 2021, and this is the latest approval we have had. And what is risk assessment procedure that is being considered for commercialization of any GMO? The NBMA review risk assessment is based on the following. There is a completion of a form, and that form gives for some detailed information, name of the applicant and the other details, description of the GMO, the characteristics of the recipient organism, for instance, that of the poor borer resistant cowpea, the genetic composition is also considered. Then the information on the release, the characteristics and factors affecting the GMO survival, multiplication, and other information are also provided. The GMO interaction with the environment is another factor we also look at to enable us to know whether the interaction with the natural environment is in conformity with environmental regulations and conditions. Then the safety consideration to humans and animals is also critical. The environmental conditions affect on non-target effects is also an issue of socioeconomic, is also very important. We also have a program for post-release monitoring for compliance with conditions of permits that the National Biosecurity Management Agency has granted to ascertain to ensure that the GM permit is the permit holder follows the terms and conditions. By way of survey, the MDM monitors commercialization of crops for additional risks to health and the environment associated with authorized dealings, any contravention of permit condition by the permit holder, any unintended effects of commercial crops, the predictions of the risk assessment, or any purposes related to risk to health and the environment associated with the commercialized product is also looked at. Another major thing we ensure that as the national agency in charge of our safety, if we find out that there is need for further imposition of additional measures, that is also added to it after the monitoring observations. And if there is need to also revoke or suspend permit granted for the commercialization, that can also be done when we realize that through the monitoring post permit monitoring. Also take necessary actions to ensure compliance with the legal obligations set out in the permit for commercialization. Also undertake any measures necessary to avert risk or danger to human health and the environment where permit holder fails to act. Nigerian biosafety regulatory experiences. We want to also share some of my experiences in the area of regulatory process as authority in charge of biosafety matters in the country. The importation of large quantity of maize consignment with Gmo seed into the country, this was experienced, and what we do, because we have a memorandum of understanding with some line ministry departments and agencies, particularly the Nigeria Customs Service and some other border agencies. These products was funded by the Nigeria Customs through our authorization. And after looking at it, we realized that yes, it's a full load of genetically modified maize. So the shipment was repatriated. However, the applicant had to apply for approval, which was granted after passing through all relevant procedures. We have also had the course of some coalition of non-governmental organizations filing suit against the agency, and because according to the civil rights groups, said the permit is injurious to human rights. So that was looked at by the court, and it was struck out that it was time-bound, banned, and also did not meet require legal technical condition that was required for such filing. We also have detractors feeding stakeholders with misleading information, particularly in the area of commercialized products, saying that the products are harmful to the environment, they are harmful to human health, and they do not confer the benefit associated with them as averred by the permit holder. This increased distraction. This has led to increased direct installation of stakeholders by National Biosafety Management Agency. Compliance and trust from people have greatly increased after this victorious, particularly winning the court case and making so much publicity, creation of awareness has actually increased the tempo of confidence in the agency, and also reduce the tempo of activism. The law should not be, Nigerian biosafety regulatory system experience, the law should not be an impediment. The outcome makes sure that the outcome is that NBM makes sure that there is the guidelines and other activities do not become an impediment to technology, which is very, very key. So our regulatory system is not to stifle the technology, but to ensure that the technology is applied safely and the products are also useful. Strong stakeholders involvement. Agencies try to carry out stakeholders along in every aspect of various activities. Also trying to ensure that transparency. This has also made it known that the agency's activities are transparent. This has given us quite a number of success in what we do. And the issue of data portability for risk assessment is also key in what we do to ensure that we do not unnecessarily invent the wheel, because this is data portability is very key, because the data submitted by the applicant is what we review to ensure that based on scientific evidence, the reports, the risk assessment report, is a basis for risk assessment and also to determination of decision making. Biosafety may not be adhered to during movement, handling, and during planting. So continuous surveillance is very key to ensure that no product is released to the environment without approval. The NBMA has developed various guidelines and other regulatory instruments that have supported our processes. This has enhanced processing, and recently we developed some guidelines on GM trade, GM grain, genetically modified grains importation, also to make the issue of trade in GM grains meet our national, international obligations in the area of trade organization, international trade organization, to make sure that Nigeria does not run contrary to international trade agreements. We have also developed a gene editing guideline recently to also ensure that we are intending with it, and we currently develop another one on steak and stack genes to also help our processes. In conclusion, the National Biosafety Management Agency is well positioned to impose any additional measures for management when the need arises, revoke or suspend permit for commercialization upon confirming the potential of crops pose any negative effects to the environment, take action necessary to ensure compliance with legal obligations set out in our permits, undertake any measure necessary to avert risks or danger to human health and to the environment. We have our communication details. We have the National Biosafety Management Agency website, all our decisions and documents, and the website. We also have working close information feeding into the Biosafety Clearinghouse regulations and the Convention on Biological Diversity. We also have other social media angles, telephone numbers for any inquiry, and email addresses also. Thank you very much. The staff of the agency is our strength. We work as a family for the interests of our country. We are about 350 staff. Thank you very much.
Professeur Ouattara, rapidement, juste pour vous dire, professeur Ouattara, la vidéo que nous venons de voir n'est pas en direct, c'est préenregistré. Donc il n'y aura pas de questions pour adresser au speaker.
OK.
Et puis, nous avons 35 minutes. Donc, vous avez 35 minutes pour le panel.
OK. Donc, je ne vais plus faire la synthèse. OK. We can continue. Professor Abdallah, what do you have to share with us according to the regulation in Nigeria to enrich what we have said now? Continue.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this program. I think it's a very good initiative, and it should be continued so that we keep on interacting with one another to foster the progress of Africa together. Thank you very much. The biotechnology in Nigeria, how the whole concept started, it started by a group of scientists in the government agency, ministry, come together to develop a policy on biotechnology. And when they did that, they took the ministers that are involved together in developing those policies. And what I'm trying to emphasize here is that right from inception, the government is involved. It's not an isolated effort. And having seen that, the government, the ministers or the executives, took it upon them with the advantages they see to push forward to the central government for approval. And this, as it is approved, led to the formation of whole agency called National Biotechnology Development Agency. And that is the beginning of the progress, which means the government have already accepted the technology to implement for the progress of the nation. So having done that, the agency was saddled with so many responsibilities. Among is the promotion of agriculture, health sector, environmental sector, and industrial sector. So this is the government agenda. The scientists come together and they push it to the government, and government see reason in that, and then it accepted it, and then this was formed. So when the organization came in place, it has collaborated, bring together many of research institutions with interest in biotechnology, with the aim of promoting this biotechnology technique, and with the aim of coordinating this biotechnology technique. also encouraging them to do more. And part of it, we have centers of biotechnology, we call them Center of Excellence, in 6 premier universities in the country. And that was the beginning. Those universities collaborate with the government agency to foster research and development in the area of biotechnology. So that makes it easier. The academia has already accepted this from government, from us, and from everybody. So which means is a collaborative effort between government and the academia. And having gone that, also the agency moved forward to see how it can bring to table the achievement of biotechnology. And what it has done is that it collaborated with international companies. The government set up the agency with the aim of promoting agriculture, so where we started, and then we collaborated with these companies, and then the AATF mediated there, and we have the first crop, the cowpea, and then we have cotton. So when they come into place, then the debate came up that we cannot have these crops in place unless we have a regulatory agency. And that was what made the formation of National Biosafety Management Agency. And it went through some little hurdles. But because government has interest in it right from the inception, because of its involvement, because of its enlightenment, then the other stakeholders, which is the parliament, the civil society, the traditional rulers, and all other stakeholders were enlightened very, very well to see that they have got the message of what exactly is going to be done with these crops when it is brought into the country. And luckily, we get them buy into the idea, and they have come to join in the progress, and the National Biosafety Management Agency of Nigeria was approved based on that. And it went smoothly. And when those crops were there, the farmers were carried along. After all the processes, after all the improvements, the achievements, the farmers were carried along at long run. And these farmers were given the opportunity to demonstrate it in their farms. And I'll give you an experience with the cowpea. We give them all these cowpea to plant in their farm after all the processes, because National Biosafety Management Agency is there and it follows all the rigors, and it was approved. Then the farmers, the extension workers, and government officials, we gave them demonstration, and they demonstrated it in their farms. And believe me what happened was that it was the farmers that were pushing. They were pushing for the product because they have seen the advantages. They have seen the profit they made, and they have seen that there was no other scary stories that they were told about it. So when you look at it, it is all encompassing. Everybody was involved. And with that, it means there is wide acceptability. So the pressure that was mounted in the beginning from those that were opposing the technology was suppressed, because everything now become glaringly clear that this technology is something that when it is practiced, there is advantages that could be drawn from it. And the farmers testify. I'm sure many of us have seen the testimony of farmers from Nigeria about all those crops that have been approved. And another thing I will tell you is that we have given the farmers of cotton to cultivate this cotton. And before I traveled down here, about 2 weeks ago, the Cotton Farmers Association of the country approached me that they were so much happy with the progress that has been made in the cotton cultivation in the country. And a lot of industries have now begun to resurrect as a result of this development. And what they were asking is for more variety to be given to them so that they can improve the farming. They are now holding with the other variety that was given to them, and they said they need more. More because there should be a competition in the market, the price of the seed will come down, and then the quality will be improved, and that is what they came to my office for. So this is also a success story on the GMOs in the country. And the maize that the speaker concluded about is on the pipeline. It has been approved. And the advantages, because of the release of the first and second crops in the country, were a success. So this made the maize to also be of success as it comes to pass for deregulation. I will tell you that what we were facing before from the pressure group have now subsided quite a lot, that they don't have anything to say because everything is based on scientific facts. And there was no any scientific fact they could give anymore. And there was no any evidence they could give anymore. And the farmers, because they are the end users, they have accepted it really with warm reception. So at this point, what I would like to say is that government was involved from the inception. And that makes things a lot easier. Because when you tell government, this is what you are going to do, as an expert, you convince them with reasons, with facts, and you tell them all those things, and I'm sure government officials will listen to you because you are the expert in there. And then stakeholders were also involved. When I say stakeholders include legislators, journalists, academics, and even extension workers and farmers. They were fully carried along right from the day one to all the processes, and we open it up. If anybody has any question, anybody has any suggestion, let the person make a suggestion, let the person make a call, let the person express his fear or express his own doubt about the technology, and we give them the benefit of doubt. We talk to them, and then they are convinced. And then government, because it is fully aware of the advantages that could be derived from using GMOs, employment creation is part of it, agricultural boost is part of it, industrial revolution is part of it. So now that government has realized the advantages of this technology, now government is focusing on health and environment, and we have researches that is going on in the area of health for vaccine development, and then in the area of environment, we have oil spillage in the country and some other things, and we are working on that. So you see how the technology is being accepted fully. And now that the genome editing technique guidelines have been approved, so government is fully aware of its advantages, and I'm sure Nigerian government is going to take with full seriousness when we forward the genome editing technique, which is also having more advantages than the GMOs, as according to the previous speakers. So this is how Nigerian deregulation biotechnology is being accepted fully, and this is how we are working on it. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Professor Mustafa. We are going on Dr. Martins. Could you talk to us about the experience of Uganda according to biotechnology deregulation?
Thank you, moderator, and I would also like to thank the key speaker for the insights that he provided about biotechnology developments in Nigeria. Now, with Uganda, we started quite well. In 2008, we came out with the biotechnology policy. And that, of course, led us to start embarking on biotechnology research, especially on the crop development process. And we embarked on the initial stages and continued with the confined field trials. And of course, it also resulted into development of guidelines for monitoring the field trials and the like. But one of the key aspects was actually the development of the biotechnology bill, and the first bill was produced in 2013. But then when this bill was presented to Parliament, it was passed, but then again it was not assented to because of various issues. And then the scientists thought and the stakeholders, and then again we came up with the Genetic Engineering Regulatory Act, and then there was also heavy work that got into that. And in 2018, this bill was presented to Parliament, and then it went through, but then again it was not assented to. And one of the issues that was pointed out by His Excellency were things to do with access and benefit sharing. He was not very contented with that clause. And then, of course, its impact on our indigenous knowledge system. And then the other aspect was on the intellectual property. And then there was also an issue on the supportive regulatory systems, especially linked to the controlled release and then the environment risk assessment. But again, in 2020, a group of what we call the Presidential Roundtable on Agriculture had a meeting with His Excellency, and the issue that was put across was that biotechnology is the way to go, especially if we want our agriculture to be more productive and to transform the economy. And basing on that discussion, there was a rethink, and then actually it was brought back to Parliament. But then it was the Parliament that its term of office was elapsing, so that period passed without much being done. But now, in the current context, Uganda National Council for Science and Technology has been requested to look at that bill again. And of course, we have addressed the issues that were raised, especially along access and benefit sharings, impact on indigenous knowledge systems, and all those other issues that have been raised. And of course, we have a new structure in our Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, where now we fall under the office of the president. So we are thinking that that communication gap is now narrower, and that provides an opportunity. And our minister actually is under the office of the presidency. And I've had discussions around 2 weeks ago, and she's very positive on moving the bill forward. Now, what has caught up with us is that since 208, we have been going up and down and the like, and during this time, there has been a lot of developments. And now, what's coming up is that we now need to include gene editing and other emerging technologies. And then, of course, the other aspect which is also coming up strongly is that the previous bill was basically focused on agricultural sciences, but now we need to look at the biomedical sciences and others which are emerging, and especially we have the Target Malaria Project, which is also taking place in Uganda, and it's using a lot of modern biotechnology techniques. And then, of course, we also have the Joint Clinical Research Center in Uganda, and they are looking forward to seeing ways of developing gene therapies, especially for treating sickle cell and the like. So it has become quite something that they want it to be very holistic. And meanwhile, we have gone far ahead with the development of our products. And actually, along the confined field trials, 2 products are actually now at the final stages of development. That is the cassava, which is resistant to the brown streak mosaic disease. And then we also have the banana, which has high contents of beta-carotene. So they are at the last stages of development. And what we have decided is that probably even if the discussions along the regulations are going on, they should still continue, especially with the final test, which involves things to do with consumer acceptability, industrial applications, and probably environmental issues. And just to sum it up, is that we strongly believe that chances are high that the third time we are trying, we are very likely to go through. And then, of course, we have also been working with ABNE on developing capacities in Uganda. And recently, we have also been collaborating with the Open Forum for Agricultural Biotechnology, OFAB, in developing the communication strategies, because that was one of the reasons that we didn't go through. And of course, we are saying that even if we have hopes that in the third time we shall go through, we need to have a different kind of thinking and approach that will help us go through. And so we are going to have a very important key stakeholder consultation on the 19th to 20th May. We normally call it the National Biosafety Forum, to discuss all these developments and see how we can develop a cabinet paper on the biosafety bill. So basically, that's what I would like to share at the moment. Thank you.
Many thanks for sharing Uganda experience. And Mrs. Ellen, Senior Planning Officer, what about Kenya experience according to what the potential of concern of us now? You are talking.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying Kenya signed a Cartagena protocol in the year 2000, and it ratified it in the year 2003, which shows it's a demonstration that Kenya is committed to the global governance of the modern biotechnology and biodiversity conservation. So this led to the biotechnological development policy, which was published in the year 2006, and eventually led to the Biosafety Act, which was established in the year 2009. This again led to the establishment of the state corporation called National Biosafety Authority, which is mandated to regulate the GMOs in the country, in Kenya. And also the main purpose is to ensure and assure that there is the safe handling, transfer, and use of the GMOs with a view to ensure there is safety of both the animal and plant health, and also protect the environment, to ensure there is adequate level of protection to the environment. So, National Biosafety Authority has made several strides. There is several regulations that has come up. One is the Biosafety Contained Use Regulation. That was year 2011. Then we have the Biosafety Export, Import, and Transit Regulation, which is the year 2011. We have the Biosafety Environmental Release Regulation, the year 2011, and the fourth one is the Biosafety Labeling Regulation, the year is 2012. Now, National Biosafety works with several other agencies in its regulation processes. There are 8 in number. Maybe I can just briefly highlight them. One is the Department of Public Health. This mainly safeguards the health of consumers via food safety and quality control. The second one is the Kenya Bureau of Standards. The main purpose is for standardizing in industry, trade, and consumer protection. The third one is the National Environmental Management Authority. We call it NEMA. It conducts the environmental impact assessment of the GMOs intended to be released into the environment. We have Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services, that is KEFIS. It offers inspectorate and vigilance services on all matters related to plant health, quality control of agricultural inputs and produce. We have the Kenya Wildlife Services. It focuses mainly on biodiversity and biotechnology in wildlife and forestry-related matters. 2 more, Pest Control Produce Board. This mainly regulates importation and exportation, manufacture, registration, and use of pest control products. We have the Department of Veterinary Service, which mainly charges with protection and control of animal disease and pests to safeguard human health, improve animal welfare through production of high-quality livestock and their products. Now, there are a number of stages that for a GMO to be commercialized, it has to undergo. I can highlight, we start from the laboratory, and then we go to the greenhouse, stroke the screenhouse, then to the confined trial processes, followed by environmental release, which other now agencies come on board. This is, we have the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate, we have the National Environmental Management Authority, and then again, we proceed to the National Performance Trials and Environment Impact Assessment, that is by the National Environmental Management Authority. And then eventually, we have the commercialization of the GMO. Now, in Kenya, NBA has made several strides so far. I can give a summary of the GMO application. So far, that 5 approved have been approved, while 2 are still pending. That is in the laboratory. 14 have been approved for the confined trials. 28 has been approved for import and transit, while 2 are rejected. And we have 3 which have also been approved for environmental release, while 1 was rejected. Those released for either commercialization or national performance trial, which is the NPT, they include the BT cotton, which was granted the environmental release in 2016, and then it was licensed for the environmental impact assessment in 2018. It then went to the national performance trials, where it was concluded in November 2019. And in December 2019, the cabinet approved, and it was eventually commercialized in the year 2020. This, of course, plays a very huge role in the country in support of the Big Four agenda, which is the promotion of the textile industries. And we have seen that the government is even keen in supporting new research institutions and the existing research institutions to ensure that more technology evolves. We have the second one as the beating maize, which was environmentally released on 2016. And then we had the environmental impact assessment, which was issued in 2019. And the national performance trials was completed in June last year, 2021. Currently, it's awaiting the cabinet's approval, and we are hoping in due course it will be commercialized. And then the final one, we have the BT cassava, which the environmental release was granted last year in June 2021. Of course, we have emerging issues and biotechnology, which include the genome editing, synthetic biology, stacked transgenes, post-commercialization monitoring of the GM crops. This year, as a country, we made progress of the there was a development and approval of the guidelines towards the genome editing regulation. That was in February 2022 this year. So generally, the government has been supporting our organization and research institution to come up with new technologies and innovations that can help the ordinary Kenyan citizens. Therefore, there are key components of biosafety regulatory systems framework, which maybe I can highlight a few. One, we have the biosafety policy. Second, the Biosafety Act and other regulatory instruments. Third, we have the administrative system which will receive and make decisions on applications. Fourth, we have the monitoring and inspection, and also systems that ensure the biosafety communication and public participation take place. A functional biosafety regulatory systems, they are guided by a good and functional administrative system that is workable legislations, policy, law, and implementing regulation. And we also have, of course, the trained and confident technical experts due to human capacity for inspection, risk assessment, and decision making. So in Africa, biosafety mainly depends on the politics to harness the modern biotechnology products, creation of enabling policy and legal environment, creation of a critical mass regulation, policymaker and decision makers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hélène. The last discussion is Mr. Olalikun from Center of Excellence, STI Hub. Mr., could you talk about the action of your structure on the present topic? Your talk. Go ahead, please.
Hello. Yeah, I think I have it. Okay, it has been projected. Can I get a monitor?
Yeah. What's here? Okay.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'll be very brief. I just want to quickly do some quick rundown on the science component of the GM, because before I got the question, I've already prepared some slides to intervene for this speech, for this section. And if you can see from what I'm projecting, it shows the event in a number, but with time, with regulation, with check, confirmation, the event has been reduced to a few one that they get final event deregulation. And each country, they have their, beyond the event regulation, their seed act also, the seed regulation, that after the event, it go through the seed system. And for Eswatini, as a case study, they have 3 components of the seed regulation that is very important before they get to the final stage. Beyond the seed regulation, just have the variety evaluation that is very critical. It's not after the event has been approved that it is saved, then it moves to the seed sector or the seed regulation act of each country for them to be able to register the event. And that is the procedure that went through in Nigeria. But for the same thing in Eswatini, the variety evaluation also went through. And if you see the last point there, there is the role that the Eswatini cotton board played. And it's also good to underpin the collaborative work here, especially with Atesa, Comesa, for us to work in Eswatini. Actually, it was Atesa that really brought us in to Eswatini to work in 2015. Well, then through the cotton board, for us to help them with our regulation system, which at the end of the day, it paid off. So the release or the deregulation or commercialization that we have seen across the board, it's not just one bullet, it's not just one group that did the work, it's a collaborative work. And I want to underpin that and mention the role that the regional bloc in Southern Africa did for Eswatini to get at this level that they have. Already, Dr. Bedba has mentioned this just to give us the status of the release or event and the commercialization that we have presently in Africa, which has also been a knowledge product. And this, if you want to see the comparison between the interface between the biosafety regulation system and the variety system in Africa, I think this should be a good reference point to check, and you'll get all within the countries that have already approved or have commercialized or they're in the process to commercialize the interface between the seed sector, the seed regulation, the variety release, variety registration, and the event approval. It was all put together as a knowledge document in this paper. And now to go to the gene editing that we are here for. I think I screenshot this from Kenya guidelines that have been developed to show the procedure that if it contains GM, then it will be regulated. If it does not contain GM, it's not regulated. And anyone that has GM in the process, then it goes to the document. It's not a blank check that all gene-edited products are not regulated, no. Or all are regulated, no. But it depends, and it's also being treated as case by case. And I think in the morning, Lehman also alluded us to that. Now, to bring this in perspective, that's where we are sitting now. We have the challenge for this misconception because science, which is an innovation component in biotechnology, is not speaking to the policy. And the policy is not getting us to practice that is the farmer that needed the product. And this is where AUD-NEPA, the African Union Technical Arm, is sitting now to connect the science that is innovation. Regulation is not in silo. And it's a decision that everybody agreed to under CBD. But for this science to translate to livelihood, there's a component of policy that's a bottleneck. And that component is where AUD-NEPA can leverage to help to navigate, to bring in the regional blocks, to move in as a continental body with a mandate from the African Union that this is the direction that the continent is going, and we need to leverage so that science, which is coming from innovation, will speak to policy, and policy will speak to the livelihood of people. Now, I brought that in perspective to link it up to what we are doing as a center of excellence now. And we have 5 centers of excellence in the African Union Development Agency, and each one of them, they navigate from one to another. And I'm sitting from the AUD-NEPA Centers of Excellence in Science, Technology, and Innovation, which were based in Stellenbosch in Southern Africa, because each center of excellence are situated in the regional blocks according to AU rule. And if you see from that, STI is at the heart, meeting the need of rural resource and food system, where ABNA is sitting in Dakar, and meeting the need of human capital and institutional development in Nairobi, meeting the need of energy and climate resilience in Cairo, meeting the need of supply chain and logistics, which will be located in Central Africa. If you see, this is a way to have a coordinated or a connection to connect the dots. There's so many activities going on the continent, but they are just running like headless chicken. But there's a time now that Africa is saying, no, we have to do something in a coordinated way. And what is the central team of the Centers of Excellence in this context is to identify the problem of plant breeding, then what is the tool that is available, gene editing, then how do you do it? Speak to the rural resource food system, then coming to the science component. And it must be science-backed, science-proven, and this must be domesticated within the continent. And now to come to there's still one, is that last?
Yeah, you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I'm almost done. That is the last. I just want to conclude on this note that when the question was asked that what is the role that the key consideration for the regulation, there are two. They are spoken about policy, they are spoken about law, they are spoken about regulation, they are spoken about guidelines, but the product, the gene editing should be regulated based on product. That's the first thing. Apart from that, which is on the paper, then there's a need for leadership. Countries that have made move in the continent, they show leadership. And you can see from the case of Nigeria, they don't even have the gene edited products. The science is not doing it, but they've already developed a guideline. Even in some countries that they are working towards that, they might not even have the product, but there's a leadership that sense the need, and they up the game. I think on that, if you see in the case of Nigeria, they have the guideline, but they don't have the product, they don't have any research going to that. If you see in Burkina Faso, they have the product, but they are putting it towards being confined and being regulated. And if you see in the case of Kenya, they have the guideline and they have the product that they are working with. I think the two components that are very important is one, the product should be, the gene edited product should be product-based, then also the need for strong leadership. Thank you so much.
It's left maybe 3 minutes. We can take 2 questions. Okay. You, please. After the ladies. Microphone, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say this is a fantastic opportunity and session to learn about the biotechnology deregulation in Africa. Our company is based in Canada, and we have two focuses of our business, which is the biostimulant area for farmers, and then also we have a laser technology that actually enhances the efficacy of our biostimulant, as well as laser treating seeds to help energize those seeds. Part of our difficulty or challenge in Canada is the regulatory environment and the difficulties that we have in registering that product or bringing it to market and commercialization. Part of the, I asked a question yesterday, and Professor Paul, let me just quickly see here, Zaliza, really, he had a very positive response, and he talked about not creating these relationships that are transactional, but actually that are transformational. And how do we co-create these technologies that we're able to share as a private industry, but share that with some of the local governments as well? The AATF has 3 goals. One, to diversify access to agriculture technology. The next is to accelerate and commercialize that technology. And then also to increase that uptake or the availability or use for local farmers. That's key to what we're trying to do. I would really like to understand and connect with some of the stakeholders here and understand how each individual countries support those 3 fundamental objectives with the ATF. And I would welcome any response that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor, you can answer after? Okay. Ladies, your question? You can take your question also before you can respond.
That's the last question we're taking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this question goes to Nigeria. If I developed genome-edited products in Kenya, would you accept them in Nigeria, and what would be the process? And then 2, in the early consultation, what specific information would you be looking for? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last question.
Should I speak louder? So if I developed genome-edited products in Kenya, and then I wanted to send them to Nigeria, would you accept them? And then the second question would be, or is, in the early consultation, what specific information would you be looking for in terms of molecular data?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I think...
shortly.
Yeah, I will say that I think there is supposed to be a relationship, which probably now is going to be created, with your research group and the research group in Nigeria. And just as it's been mentioned with the Canadian, working together, it doesn't mean that the thing has not been done in the country. If you are working together with your research group, I'm sure it is being considered as it is developed in the country, and then everything is going to go smoothly. And the second question, you said whether, you said the second question, or I answered the both question at one time? Yes, the information, you know, we have regulations, and each country has its own way of regulating its products. So the regulation has to follow through the regulations of Nigeria. And that is why I said in the first place that working together will solve all those problems. So perhaps probably, I don't know whether you have a finished product, we will subject them to all those regulations, and for sure, we believe in our scientists that come from Kenya. And for the first comment, I think what you mentioned is what the same thing. I think I've contacted you. There are a lot of countries that would like to work with you, I'm sure. And coming here, coming together, we have Audanipad, we have AATF, so this could be surrogate to the gate of reaching to African countries. They are well known, they are very experienced in getting the technology, scrutinizing the technology, and then seeing the impact of the technology in the African soil. And these two, and most especially the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, because it's agricultural product, I think is a good surrogate to start with. Meanwhile, all the people here that come from different countries, they can get in touch with you, and then definitely they can disseminate the information to their respective authorities for further deliberations and for further dissemination of the deployment of the technology, if so they wish.
Mr. Kimbo, according to transfer, technology from Uganda for Kenya to Nigeria. What about your idea about it? The question of guys there.
Okay.
To transfer, yeah, okay.
You want me to comment on that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think when you're talking of transfer of technology from one country to the other, asking for the protocol, we should remember that there's sovereignty in every country, but there must be collaboration. First thing, for instance, you want to transfer a technology from Canada to Africa, Africa as a country, maybe you want to go to Nigeria, then you go to the regulatory body. If it is a GM product, you go through the regulatory body in Nigeria. They have all the information you need to fill in. If it is not if the product will not be regulated, then if it's a seed product, you go to the seed system, which they also have an institution that has that. If it's a biotech product, you go through NAFDAC, and the director of NAFDAC is sitting down there, Professor Abdullah. So it depends on the product you want to transfer from where you are coming from to the specific country. If you are talking of Southern Africa, they also have their institutional procedure. It's only that you need to get the connection to the right government agency that give you the information. But for Nigeria, I'm sure most of the information is on internet. But if you want a further consultation, you can see Professor Abdullah is already here. Then talking of the information to be transferred from technology to, I think it also go back to my first answer. It depends on where you are going, but remember, each country, they have their sovereignty. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ladies, do you want to intervene? Mrs. Ellen, something to add?
1 minute. 1 minute.
1 minute, yes.
1 minute, go ahead.
Excuse me, 1 minute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I would also echo my friend and colleague here. Each country is different, and the right protocol in both the regulatory and I feel that's the right channel to be followed. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Many thanks. We are concluding now this session. You can say thanks for all panelists. And MC, do you have I give you a microphone now. After make clapping for everybody.
Clap for everybody, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the panelists. All right, quickly. Someone misplaced their iPhone. Someone might misplace their iPhone. If you find it, please give it to the people at the desk right outside. We have personnel right outside. Give them the iPhone if you find it misplaced. Thank you. Now, very important that you listen to me. As we exit now to go to lunch, right outside on the desk that I'm telling you about, there is ushers and people waiting for you to pick the breakout session you're going to go to when you come back from lunch. Right after lunch, we have 3 breakout sessions. You need to know in which session you're going, what session you're going to attend. For you to know that, you have to pick. So there's a list right outside. As you get your voucher to go for lunch, make sure you pick also the session which you want to attend so that you will know also the direction and what room in which you should go for that session. We'll be back here at 2:30. Bon appétit.